We have a very special guest joining us on the show today, Dr. Boyce Watkins. With over 17 years of experience as the owner of Boyce Watkins Enterprises, a media and education company that empowers the Black community, Dr. Watkins is a passionate and driven entrepreneur and finance professor, which includes nearly 3 decades of teaching at Syracuse University. He also founded the Black Business School, an online platform that provides affordable and culturally relevant education on entrepreneurship, investing, and wealth creation for Black people around the world. Dr. Boyce Watkins is a finance PhD, best-selling author, and political analyst who has made regular appearances on various national media outlets, including CNN, Good Morning America, MSNBC, Fox News, BET, NPR, The Tom Joyner Morning Show, and CBS Sports. Dr. Watkins combines his substantial experience in finance, economics, and social justice to create and share content that inspires, educates, and mobilizes millions of people. His mission is to help Black people achieve economic independence and freedom, and to contribute to the development and growth of the Black economy. Welcome to Rhythm of Life. You're not only a prolific author and speaker and financial thinker, but you've also, what I really wanted to start out with is talking about your mission with the Black Business School. But before we do that, in light of this formal introduction that I will do with you, is there anything specific, if you could just talk about the specifics that, of your background that people should know about you so that they hear you in a certain way? Like, for instance, you've been a professor at Syracuse for 29 years. You wrote a dissertation about the psychology of investment trading. Your wife is a clinical trauma therapist who delves into the subconscious mind. I've been listening to you for a while, by the way. But anyway, could you just give us a little bit of background just so that I make sure that not to miss anything important in terms of just your background educationally and culturally and spiritually?
Well, you covered a lot of good stuff right there. That defines a lot. I work pretty hard on behalf of what I know, which is the Black community, and there are some problems that I think can be solved, and my goal is to make a contribution in a favorable way. I do have that experience as a professor. I taught at Syracuse University, and did that for a while, and that was fun. And but then I realized that there were some other things where I kind of had to take the shackles off in order to do the job effectively. So the Black Business School was started almost a decade ago, and the goal was to really introduce as many people as possible to cutting edge techniques for understanding money, managing money, building wealth, overcoming the racial wealth gap, and really just understanding how to build wealth in our society, which is not exactly a country that encourages or makes it easy to do that. So beyond that, you covered pretty much everything.
Well, so you said you started the Black Business School about 10 years ago?
Yeah.
Okay. And so, was there something specific or a person that was influential? What led you down this path? Because that's a really bold move to make. I mean, you were in traditional academia. You're a hardcore academic. I mean, you have a PhD in finance. I have a dear friend that went through the PhD program at Princeton for economics. And it's no joke. It's very, very difficult work. And, and now you've transitioned because from what I gather, and please correct me if I'm wrong, you weren't able to really do what you really, really wanted to do in that environment. And every time, you've always been, from what I know, a fairly outspoken person, and you've taken some hits for that. And so here you've actually taken the reins and created something from nothing to do precisely what you want to do. Could you kind of let our viewers know what led you down that path, who influenced you, what specifically might have happened that said, I'm done, I can't do this anymore, I've got to start my own thing?
Well, like most people, I didn't see the path as I was going through it.
Mm-mm.
Sometimes you just stumble your way through through whatever, as you're finding yourself, and you're I think you're guided by a higher power. I really do. I
Mm.
think sometimes you're called to battle and you don't expect to be called to battle. It just
Mm.
happens and you respond appropriately, and next thing you know, you become a different version of yourself. Um, in terms of the process, I think it's like a lot of people, like a lot of black boys that go to college and everything. I think that my goal was to get my education so I could just fit into society and get a nice job and make some money or something like that.
Mm.
And as you get older and you see things, you start to realize that there are some things in our world that just aren't fair. Just
Mhm.
this idea that for some of us, just by being who we are, that right there is almost criminalized. Like
Mhm.
I kind of remember being 28 years old and thinking, what's wrong with the real me? Like, why do I have to hide this guy in
Mm.
order to make other people comfortable? And so it's sort of like you find bits and pieces of this other alternative truth and these hints that there's another reality you could be living that also is in alignment with you being able to more effectively achieve the goal.
Mm.
Because what happens sometimes, I think, is that you have your path and you think that that path is going to get you where you need to be to do the things you want to do, and then you realize it's just not. It's not the path. It's not going to work.
Mm.
You're not going to be where you want to be and be the person you think you're going to be, and slavery goes all the way to the top of the system. So even as I went bust my butt, got all this education because I thought education was kind of the secret to freedom, success, and everything else. I started realizing, even when I took the elevator to the top of the building, I still felt constrained and
Mm.
unhappy and not miserable. I mean, I was making a lot of money, but
Mhm.
I didn't feel like I was being very effective, and
Mhm.
I was frustrated a lot, And so, what I then realized over time is that it's hard to really be free in society if you can't pay your own bills, and that's pretty much the reality of it all. And I was teaching all this stuff, these cutting edge financial techniques to a lot of people that didn't come from the community I came from. People like me can't afford to spend 70,000 a year to go to Syracuse.
Mm.
So, and the ones that do, they're still paying their student loans off 20, 30 years later.
Totally.
And so, yeah, so I saw this thing called the internet really taking off, and I'm telling you, man, when I saw the internet was when I kind of thought about what it was and what it could be, and you see YouTube pop up and social media, I said, okay, this can actually be something that allows a broader level of reach than what we've had before, because before it was
Mhm.
all about TV and radio. And I said, okay, yeah, if I get on TV and on radio, that's great. But this digital thing allows me to possibly have access to a broad independent audience. So instead of
Mhm.
me talking to 30 people at a time, I could talk to, maybe 3,000 at a time, 300 at a time, 30,000 at a time. I don't know. I didn't know how far I was going to go,
Mm.
but I knew I wanted to try. And at the same time, my mouth gets me in trouble. I've always known that. When I was little, my mother used to say, "Boy, your mouth will either make you great or get you killed." I'm curious. I'm curious to see which one. And so at Syracuse, I was facing a little bit of heat because the things I believe and again, I can't walk away from it because I feel like it's the truth. It's not.
Mhm.
If I said things, I didn't say it to cause any problems. I just said it because it's true, and it's and what's kept us held back for so long is that we spent so much time living a lie. And
Mm.
I didn't want to live a lie. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to sit and lie and pretend like something works when it doesn't, or that something's good when it's bad. I'm not a fan of that. So I just stuck with that, and then I realized one simple reality that really helped me along the way. And one of the most important realities I learned is that there was nothing wrong with me, and that my best chance of success in this world was to not try to be somebody else. It was to
Mm.
try to be the best version of myself that I could possibly be. So that's when you're literally forking in the road and you're taking a different path. And so
Mhm.
instead of taking the path where people are teaching you who to be and you're learning how to be something that you think everyone wants, you're going down a different path of self-discovery where you're finding out
Mm.
who you are and the best versions of him and how to be the best version of him that you can be, right? Because there's 1,000 versions of me that I could present to you. And so at this point, my goal is
Mm.
to say, how do I find the best version of Boyce and do
Mm.
that? Because at that point, my probability of success is much higher because I've got kind of this monopoly on being Boyce, whatever that means, you know?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, so it's just really self-love. It really, a lot of it, what we call courage and vision and all that stuff, it's really just, do you love yourself enough to trust your vision, believe in it, invest in it, and pour into it as much as you pour into everything else. Most of the time, when you get them, you go to work for somebody, you're pouring into their vision, you're pouring into
Totally.
their
Totally.
reality. Yeah, and I say, well, why is their reality so much better than yours? Why not pour into your own reality?
I mean, you're speaking to the heart of a very, very, very important issue that a lot of people don't really fully understand about Black people, including Black people. That
Mm,
the indoctrination is intense, and it starts from a very young age, and it's mostly through the schools, through this very, very insidious type of cultural indoctrination that you talk about a lot. And you talk about the need for Black people to empower themselves to educate their own children in a very specific way because of what you're just speaking to in terms of how people see themselves. I mean, this is something, I mean, you can map that onto any family. And, I want that for my children to be self-determined and self-actualized and love themselves and all that. But there is a unique, specific issue in this country that Black people are dealing with. There's a tremendous wealth gap, obviously, but not so obvious to a lot of people. There is a huge disparity in terms of the thinking and the perspective and the lack of wealth accumulation, which you are dealing directly. You're pointing your aim right at that problem, and you're going after it with a tremendous amount of skill and mastery over the subject matter, as well as being an incredible teacher that can meet people where they're at. And some people in the Black community can't hear what you're saying, but plenty of people can. And it's really amazing. How do you navigate that terrain in terms of, first of all, identifying the perspective and then navigating it with people who can't hear what you're saying?
Um, I think that comes to, um,
At first,
yeah, yeah, no,
because
no, that
you've won a
you're
lot
right.
of people over.
Yeah, but you're right. A lot of people I haven't won over. I never will, and
Right.
it's I have to be okay with that. I mean, even somebody who's loved as much as Barack Obama is actually
Mm-hmm.
hated by 50 million, 60 million people. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and so no one's ever going to be able to connect to everybody, and you
Mm-hmm.
can try, and it's just not going to work. And I think accepting that reality goes a long way, and then really accepting just who you are and knowing what you're good at and what you're not good at. What I am not good at is I'm not a great bridge builder.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not the I'm more the pastor who will preach to the choir than the pastor who's going to go preach to the heathen and try to
Mm-hmm.
the heathen who might stab him in the middle of the sermon or something. It's like here's the church, here's what we're doing. You can come in or you can stay outside, but if
Mm-hmm.
you're going to be disruptive, then we'd rather talk to you later when you're ready. Because
Mm-hmm.
right now, I believe that my greatest strength is to mobilize those who look around and who see a lot of what a lot of us see, which is that there's a problem and that there's a void and that something needs to be done and we have to fix that. Um, I'm not real good at convincing people who just choose to be skeptical and not really open to a different way of approaching things. I
Mm-hmm.
just assume maybe someone else will share a message that they can relate to, or maybe in the next generation their kids will understand something about this, or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm the one who's out of
Mm-hmm.
it. I just look for the people who are gonna listen and hear it and say, okay, I get it, I understand,
Mm-hmm.
and those tend to be people who've had a certain experience that makes them understand. I think that racism has a way of kind of slapping you out of la la land, with some sort of traumatic experience where you
Totally.
say, okay, I don't like any of this. This is a bunch of crap. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to do something. I'm going to make a different decision. And so, for example, when I talk to other black people that are very happy with where they are and they don't think racism is an issue at all and they think everything's fine, then I wish them the best. I'm happy for
Mm-hmm.
those people.
Mm-hmm.
That's good for you because I don't feel that way. And most of the people, that tend to listen, they have to typically have an experience. Either someone has to have introduced them to those ideas earlier when they were
Hmm.
younger. Maybe it's, for example, sometimes with younger women, if they have a certain kind of father, they'll be more likely to listen. There's some
Hmm.
people aren't just don't really want to hear much of what a black man has to say, you know?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so that's kind of how my goal really is. I can't really change who I am very much, and so I get up every day and I say, I'm going to work with the people that show up and the
Mm.
ones who get it, who want to be there. And the blessing is that there are some people who feel that way. And so at that point, it's like, okay, let's rock it out. Let me really see if I can help you get to that financial mountaintop so that we can really
Hmm.
understand what's going on. And the other people that don't get it or have a skeptical word or two to say, they're not even part of the conversation at that point. It's just, it's like believe what you want. Just stay out of the way.
You've
I won't
got
bother
you've
you.
got you've got a great freedom to be yourself. I mean, that's something that's actually therapeutic to listen to for me,
Mhm,
particularly when we were going through the pandemic, just to be
mhm,
yourself and authentic and like you respect that other people have different opinions. I think that's so wonderful. There's not a whole lot of listening in our public
mhm,
discourse, unfortunately. There's a whole lot of yelling and I'm right and you're wrong and all that other nonsense. I couldn't care less about that. I don't care about
mhm,
winning a debate. I care about learning. And
yeah.
then, and we can share ideas and we don't have to agree or what have you. But what's so interesting about what you're doing, Dr. Watkins, is that you are empowering people in a very particular way, your community, Black people, in a very specific way, so that it's not about can I get the job? How about how about create the jobs,
Mhm,
create the infrastructure, create the institutions so that Black people have some elbow room and some leeway and some freedom to
mhm.
chart their own path. Could you speak a little bit more about that, and also some of your main influences that have pushed you and inspired you along the way, including Dr. Claude Anderson?
Yeah, yeah, sure, Steve. I'll tell you. What's funny is that I talk. I mean, I'm here for the black community. That's the first thing I always say is, that's my first priority. But I don't push anybody away. I have
Mm,
people that are not black that they understand freedom doesn't necessarily have value for any specific group of people or any
mm,
specific race.
mhm.
There are lots of Americans that are frustrated or stressed out for one reason or another, and because when you really talk about capitalism, there's just a lot of pimping going on. There's a lot of, control the masses. When they talk about the Rockefellers and how they,
Oh,
like they're how they sort of shape the school system to create a bunch of drones that
oh
want to
my
get up
God.
and go to work every day, and I mean, they're constantly playing with our minds. They're constantly
Totally.
manipulating us into massive amounts of consumption that we can't afford. The student loan debt crisis and kind of how that came to be, and
You
and
ever feel like the country is kind of like an open air prison sometimes? You're like,
Mhm.
I,
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes I hear exactly what you're saying. I mean, it's like ridiculous. It's unsustainable. And I love, like when I first studied, I took a good bit of economics in undergrad, and when I studied classical economics, I'm like, this is obviously philosophy by a bunch of rich people that like, oh, everybody's rational in their like decision making. I'm like, not when you're desperate, not when
Right.
your back's up against the wall. And a lot of people in this country, Black and not Black, and variety, and a lot of white people have their backs against the wall. And I love that you're a finance professor, and now you've started a Black business school, and you're teaching people how to empower themselves in this way. But you're not a hardcore capitalist, and you have very specific critiques about it. And it's like you're in my head when I was in school. I'm like, yeah, this is ridiculous. Of course, it's unsustainable. And yes, there's a lot of pimping going on. And if you don't
Mhm.
arm yourself, you will get taken advantage, chewed up, spit out. And you're very, very straight with folks, which is so refreshing. It's great. But yet, also on the flip side, you are, you can appreciate, you're not a Marxist, but you appreciate what Marx was throwing down in terms of his critique of capitalism, which everybody should listen to. And I think that's really, really wonderful.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, I agree. I mean, I think everybody should understand any ideas that can help them to create the life that they want. Um, because the system and the government, sometimes they end up just lying to you, and they lie to you for their own possibly rational reasons, which is, we got to control all these people. We got
Mm-hmm.
to get them to do what we need them to do,
Mm-hmm.
and they create all these little incentives from everything. Like I was just talking today to my students about how just a few years ago, when you and I were growing up, they used to tell us how the world population was getting too big and we need to have fewer kids because
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
eventually we wouldn't be able to feed everybody. Now they're literally talking about the opposite. They're now saying that we won't have enough people. And now they're
Mm-hmm.
trying to, like China and other places are trying to get people to have kids. And they can't, and so it really speaks to this idea that we have this big economic farm, if you will, and we're all a bunch of pigs and chickens on this farm. And the farmer is trying to figure out, how do I get the herd to go this way or that way? And my thing is, like, stop being a sheep. You're not a pig or a chicken. You're a human being, and you have to have a degree of consciousness about what's happening around you to
Mm,
understand that. And
totally.
that, yeah, that's why every morning, when I created a class called Financial Consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
and we do that every morning. And I said, I got to do this class for free because I need us to really understand and be aware of just what's happening around us financially so that you can A, avoid some of these traps, but then B, you can actually see opportunities for yourself.
Totally.
There is, I mean, America, as much as there are problems in this country, we're still one of the richest countries in the world. And there's abundance if you know how to position yourself, right? Where you can succeed and do well and be free and not hurt
Mm-hmm.
anybody at the same time. And so
Mm-hmm.
a lot of that comes down to various elements of self-determination, which only
Mm-hmm.
comes when you can actually snap out of it. So to your point, I think that a lot of this manipulation is everywhere. I agree with what you said about Marxism and capitalism. I don't believe in extremism, right? I don't
Mm-hmm.
believe that you have to be a hardcore capitalist because hardcore capitalism is what's going to destroy America, in my opinion. We don't care about the
Totally.
poor. We don't care about children. We don't care about the future. We don't care about workers'
It's
rights.
so short-term thinking. It's so
Yeah,
short-sighted in just about every way.
yeah, it's incredibly short. And if you look at the incentives, it kind of adds up, right? Politicians are elected for 4 years, and so all they care about is the next 4 years. They're not thinking
The
about 30 years.
incentive structure is like upside down in terms of sustainable, empowered, healthy communities.
Yeah, yeah. There's no effort really, not much effort to really do
Mm.
that in a capitalist system, and so Marx was right. I just don't go to the same extremes as Marx.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't want to destroy the capitalist system.
Mm-hmm.
I would just rather fix it. Because many of our problems in society can be easily fixed if we actually cared enough to do what needed to be done to fix it. Just like homelessness and all that, those are easy fixes. You just have to train our people not to be so greedy and selfish, right? So, with that said, you're asking, I guess, in terms of influences and stuff like
Oh,
that.
yes, yes,
Uh,
yes, yes.
yeah, Dr. Claude Anderson, obviously number one, just my
Mm-hmm.
favorite GOAT of all time. Malcolm X, I admired Malcolm X because he was brave and intelligent and disciplined and everything else. Minister Louis Farrakhan,
Mm-hmm.
who was kind of a friend of mine. You and I are both from Chicago, and
Yeah,
Father Michael Pfleger.
didn't you
Mhm.
live in the Hyde Park Kenwood area? Yeah, that's where
Yeah,
I grew up, in Hyde Park.
yeah, yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, I lived on that same street as Obama. It was like
Right.
two
Okay.
blocks down.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I remember seeing his motorcade come through, and I counted the number of cars in the motorcade. There's like 37 vehicles in this big old. Yeah, it was crazy, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah. So, who else? Muhammad
Oh,
Ali. I'm from.
by
Sorry,
the way, what was the first book that you read from Dr. Anderson?
Black Labor, White Wealth.
And I mentioned that I was talking a little bit about you to a friend of mine, and then I told him your mentor is Dr. Claude Anderson, and he wrote a book called Black Labor, White Wealth. The title, just in and of itself, says a lot. It's like, boom, we're going to deliver you some intense truth that you didn't get taught in school, for sure. Which is
Yeah,
probably, that's actually most of what you're talking about is not taught in school.
yeah. And there's a reason for that. I mean, right? Again, if you're trying
Oh,
to manage the cows, the pigs, and the chickens, you don't want to teach them to become these conscious beings that care as much about
no,
themselves as they do about your agenda and your objective.
no.
If you run a chicken farm and your goal is to get the chickens all together and make them fat so you can sell them to KFC,
Uh-huh.
that's what you're going to do. You're not going to teach the chickens to value themselves and have their own purpose, in life and all this other stuff. You really want them to sort of fit in and do what you need them to do. So,
Hmm.
a lot of these systems just, I see exactly why they do what they do. I see exactly why
Hmm.
they teach what they teach in school. The educational system's not designed to create these independent thinkers and everything else.
No.
It's designed to create people that can sit down, shut up, and get ready to go to work, who are going to be incentivized and rewarded to go to college and go in debt. And then debt is a great way to turn someone into a slave. Because
Hmm.
now they've got this massive amount of debt that they'll never work off. I know
Hmm.
60-year-olds who haven't paid their student loans. So what do? You have to go to work in order
Hmm.
to just maintain. You're not getting ahead. You're just
Right.
maintaining. So as a result, you have just millions of people who have been working for the last 30, 40 years who have a net worth that's lower than a newborn baby, you
It-
know, which is crazy.
and I mean, it really comes down to, like, you mentioned Dr. Claude Anderson. Yeah, and lastly, I think you mentioned Father Flagrant, as well as Muhammad Ali. I mean, Muhammad Ali, he was all about, he went through an incredible transformation in terms of, self-love, being true to himself, being a reflective, conscientious person. And he was, extremely controversial. Well, it seems like, um, and you touch on this so well, throughout your, all of the time that I've been listening to you on your podcast, and that, any person, and it's not just from any other race, specifically Black people who are speaking out for real Black empowerment, they'll be vilified, crucified, and it happens routinely. And you can look at anybody, like, look at what the Black Panthers were viewed. We did a special on this show on Fred Hampton. Of course, they were viewed as terrorists, and it was all ridiculous and upside down and completely false. But that was the prevailing narrative, because certain powers that be were in charge of the media outlets, and that's just kind of how it goes. So, um, you know, and you talked about that thing with what happened with Ice Cube when he went on. Well, he didn't go, but he met with Trump, and then they were mocking him on Saturday Night Live, and I actually saw the clip that I was completely appalled at. And that's no accident. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. Let's start with Ice Cube. I think it's great to start with something
Hmm.
where we can kind of pinpoint it. And I remember when Ice Cube was doing everything that he did, and I thought he did a great job. His
Hmm.
contract with Black America was amazing,
Mm.
and and the reality that we have to really face is that there's not much of an incentive for someone who has been exploiting you and taking advantage of you to support your sudden decision to do what's best for you instead of doing what's best for them. Black people are an incredible tool for the political system. The Democratic Party has lived off of us for a long time. Corporations live off of our money.
Hmm.
The school system, even the Chicago public school system, which unfortunately has a lot of work to do when it comes to educating Black kids,
Hmm.
they make billions from having those little black bodies in the seats. So we are a really important commodity. We're almost like a type of oil or something, or
Hmm.
copper, or just, so um, I don't understand if you really think about it, maybe instead of thinking that there's something wrong with them for vilifying us for thinking for ourselves, maybe there's something wrong with us for thinking that they should celebrate us doing what's best for ourselves. Like I think there's something wrong with us to even think that why in the world if again, let's go back to pimping. I like simple analogies because everybody understands what a pimp does. Why in the world would a pimp ever support the idea of his prostitute becoming this free, independent thinker and leaving the street corner so she can go back to college and building her self-esteem and building this independent power base that takes him out of the equation? That puts his
Hmm.
financial security at risk. There's no reason on earth that pimp should really support that. Maybe people are, maybe there are people that are just that decent where they would care enough about another person to destroy themselves in the process, but most people don't do that, especially not pimps. You should expect that the pimp is going to retaliate. You should expect that he's going to speak negatively and try to talk her out
Hmm.
of it, maybe threaten to beat her up. Just all these things that people do when they are afraid of losing something that they feel entitled to. So
Right.
my argument, Steve, is that there are people that feel entitled to black people. They feel entitled to have our money and to have our votes and to have our attention. That's why Joe Biden just went ballistic in that interview where he said, if you don't vote for me, then you ain't black. Right? That was the frustration. Like, wait a minute, hold on. You're not supposed to be doing what's best for you. You're doing what's best for me.
Totally. And then you actually, I've heard you talk about this in depth. You took it, several steps further with the handlers of the black community that are coming specifically down from the Democratic Party. Could you speak to that a little bit? Because a lot of people have no clue about what you're talking about there.
Yeah, well, we have this term black leaders, and I think that's a bad term because most of the people that we think are black leaders are not really leaders. They're more what I would call Negro managers. And their job is to just manage the black community and to deliver us to a specific place so that whoever is compensating them can exploit something from us, right? So, for example, when Diddy ran his Vote or Die campaign, again, where they're constantly using fear to get black people to do the same thing that we've been doing for a long time that really hasn't worked the way it should. I knew even when Diddy would sort of step to the front of the revolt, and that's what they do. They'll step to the front of some movement. There'll be some movement that bubbles up, and then the celebrity will step in front of it. Like, like the bus is moving, I'm going to get in the driver's seat of the bus and I'm going to drive the bus in the direction that it needs to go. So when in every election, whenever there are people who say, we need to vote for something that's going to benefit us, or we need to demand this or demand that, or no reparations, no vote. Well, then you pop a Diddy out there and a Diddy says, yeah, that's right. No reparations, no vote. If you don't give us what we want, we're going to withhold the black vote. I remember him specifically saying that. But when he said that, I knew that at some point, what was going to happen is they're going to circle, turn the wheel on the bus and get back to some basic message like, if we don't vote, I know that we have these other issues, but we have to get Trump out of office. If we don't stop Trump, this is the most important election in our generation. If we don't get him out of office, then we're all going to die. So stop asking for things and let's just make sure we show up and vote and let's worry about these other things later. Right? That's a constant move that's used. Diddy, Al Sharpton, people like that. And so, even Roland Martin, unfortunately, kind of has this awkward role where he sort of does that. And, and I don't tell anybody what they should do. I give them a really simple message that I think is okay. And the message is, do what you want to do. Do what's best for you.
I know. And I love, that's so wonderful because, our society, particularly, this has been put on steroids with social media, is that we're all in our silo, we're all in our tribe, we're all in our identity is like way mixed in with politics and religion and all that other nonsense. And you bust people out of that. I mean, you helped me see that in a much more profound way, which I'm grateful for in terms of you should always hear what other people have to say. The idea of voting blue no matter who is ridiculous. And it's like, I've always grown up, my father was extremely progressive, but he was like beyond a party affiliation. He was like a freedom fighter. I mean, when I interviewed Jesse Jackson about him, he was not a normal guy at all. I mean, he went down to Mississippi and, he testified on behalf of a black man that was accused of raping a white woman and the guy was acquitted and he was beat up with brass knuckles and all of his civil rights friends were like saying, don't do this. And I think my father was like way beyond that in terms of like, you remind me of him to a degree in terms of his ability to really like listen and not pretend you know everything. It's just so silly. Like I listen to, people who are libertarians, who are conservative, who are progressive. I don't care. What I care about is learning. And you really advocate that. And I remember you said something like, that really hit me hard. About, it's really easy. A lot of people cut their relatives or friends off for like being for Trump or whatever. Well, I kind of unfortunately did that a little bit with one of my relatives because I was so upset. And it's like, that was so like not how I want to be at all, at
Mhm.
all. And family is way more important than that, and it's really easy to get wrapped up in our identity. And you mix a little religion in there, it's like boom, it's like a bomb, and it's powerful. But the thing is, what you're teaching people to do is to really think critically and think for themselves. So like just a perfect example. As growing up, I think I mentioned this to one of the people that works with you, Micah, about how you know you're close with Minister Louis Farrakhan. Well, I'm Jewish, and I grew up and I was always told that he was anti-Semitic, and he may be, he may not be. I don't know him personally, but I thought, okay, well, this is my new thing. I'm gonna listen to, well, not new, but I always have advocated ever since I was pretty young, like, okay, you're telling me what somebody else is or somebody else is saying. I'm going to listen to them directly and make my own determination. So I went and saw him speak at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, a couple hours speech. And I took ironically, this guy from a small town in Wisconsin wanted a room with me, who I kind of befriended. He was small town, Marshfield, Wisconsin. I'm like, man, we don't have anything in common. I'm listening to house music and you're listening to Jimmy Buffett. How are we going to get along? And he said, and he's like, come on, man, it'll be really cool. And I said, well, come with me to this Louis Farrakhan speech and we'll talk about it. And we did. We had the most incredible conversation. I learned a lot. Then I listened to 2 more full speeches from Minister Farrakhan in full on television. Still didn't hear anything. Learn more. And it's like, okay, and anybody who ever said that to me, I just said, well, if you really have an issue with him or anybody and you want me to consider, you tell me, give me a clip in context of what they said, and I'll listen. I've yet to hear that. And I think just like whether it's Minister Farrakhan or RFK Jr. or Trump or whoever it is, or you, for instance, there's a lot of people vilifying you all the time. I mean, you got into it with Bill O'Reilly a while ago, didn't you, on Fox?
Yeah.
And, like they're making you into something that you're not. And you've got enough backbone to demonstrate, like, no, I'm not gonna like fit into this ridiculous paradigm or stereotype or caricature that you want me to fit into. I'm gonna be me. And by your very being, you're creating controversy because you're not fitting into this nice name. I love that because I couldn't care less about that. I'm more attracted and are just compelled to people who are just being real and honest. Could you speak a little bit to that, and also to your experience with Bill O'Reilly, who's supposedly this guy who's really well versed in history, but a lot of the stuff he did when he was on the air was just, honestly, with all due respect to him, just full of crap. I mean, he was just trying to push a narrative. It's like, man, if you got a perspective, that's fine. Let me hear what you got, but at least be respectful and fair to people. And he just seemed to be like a bully. And what you demonstrate and teach is that for young men, particularly young black men, is to stand up and be strong and be heard and be counted. And you're not apologizing for who you are. Could you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, you said a lot in that. It's I enjoy hearing. Yeah, as you're talking, like so many different thoughts would just trigger in my head.
Well, that
Okay, so
happens when you're talking and I'm listening to your podcast. I'm like, boom, 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 boom. Then I go to tell my son some stuff. Anyway, go ahead, please.
yeah, well, you know what, man, I'll tell you, Steve. Let's start with one thing that's simple and obvious when we say it, but I don't know if we think enough about this. I saw somebody that made a joke on Instagram, and they said that, back in high school, they would separate kids based on their, let's say, intellectual capacity, right? You had the advanced class, the regular kids class, the honors class, and then the class of the kids that were kind of not quite there yet, if you know what I mean.
Right, sure.
And he said that, but the internet is a place where all those kids are gathered together and we're all arguing with each other, and that's what I got from that. What that made me think about is that the way you communicate your ideas shows that you have a high IQ. You don't just have a strong brain, but you use it. And that just by definition means at some point you're going to come to conclusions and realities that some other people aren't going to understand. It doesn't put anybody down. It doesn't mean they're not worthy of anything. But if you think about it, why is Donald Trump so popular? Well, you've seen the analysis where they say that he's popular because he communicates on an 8th grade level. And when I saw that, I said, oh my God, I can't. Okay, so the world is full of 8th graders, apparently. That's, what a lot of us are. And I'm not, and I want to say that in a way that's honest without putting anybody down. But I just know that if I come in and I'm a professor. I mean, I had, God, I was teaching college students 30 years ago. So I'm gonna see stuff that's different. I'm not even gonna say better. I don't want to get into elitism, but I'm gonna just see stuff where and when I forget, when I get into this whole like, okay, I want to be down to earth. I don't want to think that I'm better than anybody or whatever. The trap of that though is that I can look at something and say, well, if I see it, of course everybody's gonna see it. Like, don't you all see this? What's going on? Like, and I'll get really mad. I'll be like, no, boys, don't get mad. Maybe you just understand some things that some other people don't understand yet, or maybe they'll never understand, or maybe they just have a different point of view. But you can still learn from listening to them, and I'm a big advocate of listening to people, and the ability to even listen to people and not get caught up in your feelings and get caught up into these weird factions and on this low vibrational behavior. That's a self-awareness journey. That's about healing enough where I'm not gonna be offended just because you disagree with me. Like I can be conscious enough that word consciousness to me is really powerful because I can, if I'm conscious, I can sit here and say, you know what, Steve believes, he believes that the Chicago Bears are gonna have a good football team one day, and I don't. So and that's okay for him to believe that. You know what I mean? Like we can talk about it, and I can just hear you without just saying, how can you think that? What's wrong with you? And I think that's the world that we live in. I think that's that divisiveness. I think it's created by, social media contributes to it. I think that there are people that benefit from the divisiveness.
Totally.
Yeah. You mentioned O'Reilly. I have a very hard time believing that O'Reilly is weird enough and dumb enough to really believe everything that came out of his mouth. I don't believe that he believed these things. I don't.
Totally. Me neither.
I believe Bill O'Reilly, Sean Hannity, they understand how to make lots of money by playing a character that fits into what's already going on in this society. You have a divided society. So if I have a podcast, I'm not going to get the biggest audience by being thoughtful and reasonable and inclusive of different ideas. No, I get the biggest audience by coming in with these definitive one-dimensional opinions that an 8th grader can understand, that state one thing, women are wrong or black people are this and this, whatever. And that is the world we live in. And so to some extent, when you're sitting in the middle of what really has devolved into a civil war, and you're the person who says, well, maybe the other side isn't so bad. Well, now you're in trouble. You got to be real strong to take that position because you're going to get beat up by both sides. I got Democrats that cuss me out. I got Republicans that cuss me out.
Totally.
I have white people that can't stand me. I have black people that can't stand me. And it's unfair. It makes you upset. You're like, gosh, I'm not trying to hurt anybody. But we live in a world that's kind of gang affiliated. So if I live in a neighborhood, if I live in a neighborhood where half the community is controlled by the Crips, the other half is controlled by the Bloods. If I'm the guy who stands and says, look, I'm not joining anybody's gang, I better be ready to fight because I'm going to, it's not like I'm a Crip where I've got to fight every battle that a Crip fights. That's pretty hard, but it's really hard when you may get beat up by both sides because you haven't picked a side. You're saying I'm picking my side and that's hard, right? So, so I'm going to go to another word that I think is simple and universal that describes a big chunk of our human journey. And that word is love. And love is an important word for me because I think courage and the ability to be who you are and to stand by that person through thick and thin really requires a commitment to self-awareness and a love for yourself, a love for your purpose, a love for the people that you're speaking to. That really becomes kind of like your armor and your shield when you're dealing with all the chaos that exists out here, or you deal with self-doubt. Like I go out and I say something wrong or say something stupid or the people that used to like me, they suddenly hate me. It takes a lot of self-love to kind of be able to withstand all that. and to just say, I'm still okay. Like I'm not, yeah, I said something dumb, but I'm not a dumb person. I'm not a bad person. And so love kind of drives everything. Like when I learned, who Boyce was and got to know him and got to like him and decided that he's okay even when he's flawed, that gave me the courage to sort of almost nakedly walk out into the world and accept whatever came with being committed to whatever I believe. Like that literally is what I go back to because it's hard. It's really hard. It's really hard to sometimes I have these moments where I say, God, I don't think I have any friends. You feel like you're like, God, I don't have, guys, a lot of people that hang around me, they hang around me because they're getting money from me or something like that. And you're just kind of sitting there, dealing with all that. And you got to have a process for that,
Yeah. I was wondering, what is your support mechanism and your process for that? I mean, you got married not too long ago. You're all about family. Could you talk about the support mechanism that you advocate? Family is critical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, family is important. I think I know that every day when I get up and I try to remember who I'm doing this for. I do it for the people who love what I'm doing, who support it. I can't say that I'm doing this to please the people who hate my guts or want to see us fail. I'm not here for them. So I don't spend too much time addressing critics because I'm wasting the time of the people who appreciate the mission. And so I'm here for them and that's it. I think also little things like meditation, getting closer to God, consciousness really allows you to rise above it basically. Every day when I do financial consciousness training, my visualization of consciousness is where you live in, say, the three-dimensional world, but you go to the fourth, fifth, or sixth dimension. And you can, and so if you think about it, like going from 2 dimensions to 3, you're basically just rising above, right? Everyone else is on the ground in the trees. You rise above the trees and you're looking at the whole forest. And then maybe you go to another dimension where you're looking at the past and the future of the forest. You're looking at time and you're seeing 5 years down the line. So like, for example, one way that I'm able to escape stupid arguments with my wife is I sit and I say, gosh, is this really going to matter to me 5 years from now? No, it's not. But what will matter is if I get a divorce. If I get a divorce, I'm going to remember that 5 years from now.
Right.
But whatever we're arguing about won't matter to me in 5 years. And then I say, well, if it won't matter in 5 years, then why are you so angry about it right now? And so that consciousness exercise, which I think comes from those quiet moments alone where you sit back and you take a step back and think about, okay, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? Who are you trying to be? Just constantly hitting the reset button. I think every morning, most of us should just hit the reset button and don't just think about who you are, but think about who do you want to be right now? Who do you want to be today? Right. And I believe if every day you get up and you say, this is the guy I want to be today, and you focus on that, I think that'll get you through a bunch of nonsense, because I admit, I feel like in my life, I spend a lot of time filtering through things that might worry me or upset me or just, or occupy too much of my attention. And life is too short for that. I think a lot of us get so bogged down in minutia and things that won't matter 5 or 10 years from now that we miss our bigger purpose. And I want to figure out what's that purpose and how do I latch on to that every day? And that does require hitting the reset button, especially when you go through something where you get sucked into something that takes you down a notch in terms of the level that you're vibrating on. So I'm really big on, I'm not even, I don't even know much about metaphysics. I don't go to church, but I think a lot about God and spirituality and frequencies and all these things. But I think about it more so as a mathematician, more so than like a religious person. But I believe that's really important. Because, your life is short and you got to connect to your purpose before you get old and die. And you don't want to figure it all out when you're 92 years old on your deathbed. You want to figure it out now.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And, it's interesting. I mean, I was curious why you were well, so many things came up in my head when you were talking, but it reminded me of something you've talked about in your early childhood, that you were labeled, I believe, as ADHD, and the recommendation was to put you on drugs. And I think your mom or grandmother said no and allowed you and kept positioning you to flourish in whatever way she could. Could you talk a little bit about that? And then what led you, what attracted you to finance and economics?
Okay. Well, to start with the ADHD stuff, when I was 5 years old, my my mother told me that there was this young teacher who happened to be a white lady that was my teacher in class, and she said that she was really irritated because I had a lot of energy. I would stand up, sit down, walk around the classroom, sing, and all this stuff. And the studies show that little boys we have testosterone. We don't want to sit down the whole time. You can't teach a little boy the same way you would teach a little girl. We're just different. So anyway, so she said, so the teacher told my mother, she said, so I was going to embarrass him, and so I was going to let him just do what he normally does and just ignore him, and then I was going to ask him to tell me what I was teaching the whole time he wasn't paying attention. So she said that's what she did. She started teaching. I got up, I'm walking around, I'm just doing whatever I'm doing, and then at the end she says, okay, I'm going to get him now. So she goes, Boyce, tell me. What did I just explain to the other kids? And she said, do you know that he told me every single thing that I had put on the board? He learned everything. And she said, so your son is smart. He's gifted. She said, that what's going to happen when he gets in the public school system is they're going to try to medicate him and they're going to diagnose him and all that. And she just flat out told my mother, you just ignore all that. Like there's nothing wrong with that.
Well, that's great. Oh, okay.
Yeah, and my mother took it to heart. I mean, she fought with those teachers. She'd say, no, there's nothing wrong with him. He's not slow. He's not. No, we're not doing the medication thing. He's just energetic. So I probably did have ADHD, but I believe that that's just for a lot of us. That's just how God made us. And I think an active mind is a superpower. You just got to learn how to control it. Yeah,
totally.
You just have to. Yeah,
these like it's like an imposition of trying to categorize you and then sell you a drug, and it's just nauseating in this country. You know what I mean? And it happens over and over again. Oh, you're a little depressed as a teenager? Take this little SSRI. That'll help you. I mean, I have two teenagers, 17-year-old boy and a 14-year-old girl. The last thing, the very, 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 very last line of defense would be to consider some sort of synthetic drug. Personally, I would try anything else. Meditation, get in the gym, get some therapy. And it's a wonderful thing. And also, you've really dispelled a lot of the thinking or the conventional wisdom, which usually lacks wisdom, about therapy and how wonderful it can be. And you have a financial therapy department. Could you please? So I know I'm jumping around. Please, maybe I have ADHD, but I've been undiagnosed, and I don't give a damn. I do not care. But I mean, you were saying specifically, you've mentioned that your community really could benefit financial therapy, which is why you have a financial therapy department in the Black Business School. It's just another example of how you formed this school and you cater it specifically toward the people that you're mainly serving, although it's open to everybody. I've taken seminars from you, which are awesome. But could you please talk a little bit about why the Black Business School has a financial therapy department and what specifically it addresses?
Yeah, people would be amazed at how the mindset of a wealth builder differs from the mindset of a person who stays poor. And it's not to vilify poor people. That's not the goal at all. And it's really to say that, like in the Black Business School, the acronym we have for poor is passing over opportunities repeatedly. And so what we say is that, look, for our Black students anyway, I say, look, you're never going to be a white man. You're never going to be born rich if that wasn't how you were born. But let's not spend all of our time just being miserable over the things we don't have and all the things that are wrong. Let's look at some things that are right, and let's look at some opportunities. Because, for example, 60% of all Black wealth goes towards servicing things like student loans. And so just
wait, could you say that one more time slowly?
Yes. 60% of all Black wealth goes towards servicing student loans.
That's incredible statistic.
Yeah. And so just by really critically analyzing our relationship with these universities that drain us of our wealth, that right there will make a big difference. And it helps you understand what's really happening, why Black wealth is going down. It's expected, the median Black wealth is expected to be zero by the year 2053. So what this means it isn't just that all your wealth was stolen. It's that It's that your wealth is continuing to go out of your pocket. That your biggest wealth builders, which is, this talented tenth, the educated class, they're contributing as much to the racial wealth gap as poor people are, right? So it doesn't mean that college is bad. I'm not anti-college. It just means maybe we have to sort of think this through and figure out what are the skills of a wealth builder and what does that look like? What's the mindset of a wealth builder? It's certainly not the person who goes to college and goes $200,000 in debt so they can get a job that, that can never repay the debt. Like that's
Exactly.
not right. So effectively mindset, things that we think have nothing to do with wealth have everything to do with wealth. And my wife, who happens to be a great therapist, really helped me introduce me to concepts within therapy and psychology that apply directly to finances. Like for example, if you overspend, what are the psychological and emotional reasons that you do that? What are the psychological and emotional reasons that we give our money away to buy these expensive European products that don't mean anything? Well, if you go back and you watch Ebony Magazine's video, How to Sell to the Negro, you'll see that there's a psychology there. It's all psychological. It's, what makes you feel better about yourself by giving all your money away to basically purchase your self-esteem or whatever? Or what was it about your experience as a child psychologically that shaped your view when it comes to money? Or who taught you that the best way to build wealth was to go to school and get good grades so you can get a good job, basically working for the very same people who hate your guts, who put you on that same hamster wheel that the rest of America's on, where you're not actually building any wealth, and you become one of those people that's worked 40 years and your net worth is lower than that of a newborn baby. It's not supposed to work that way. If you work hard, you're supposed to have a surplus from that. You're supposed to benefit from that. So if you have no surplus, what in the process do we have to tweak to fix that? It's not a matter of saying, okay, you got to be a different person and take a whole different path. It's to say, let's just pivot. Let's just change one little thing. And in most cases, if you just change one or two little things, it makes a massive difference. So, for example, we say little things like, well, what would happen if you started investing what if you bought $5 a day of stock? And I know you don't maybe about a $5 a day plan. Like, what would happen if you bought $5 a day? $5 a day you can't even buy a McDonald's value meal for $5 a day. What if you bought $5 a day worth of stock and you randomly picked an S&P 500 stock and you did that for your family from the day your child was born until your child was 20 or 30? Well, by the time your child is 10, your family would have roughly $29,000 liquid. By the time your child is 20, you have roughly $100,000 liquid. By the time your child is 30, you have almost $250,000 liquid. After year 10, you're not poor anymore. Most poor people don't have $29,000 liquid sitting in a bank account somewhere. So in the first decade, the poverty thing is already the past. You're going to have haters now because everyone's going to think that, that you were born with a silver spoon in your mouth, right? But you do that over time. This is what generational wealth looks like. And if you think about that, just that little $5 a day, that's a tiny pivot. Most of us spend more than that. When you add up the fast food or the Starbucks or whatever it is we spend our money on, the Jordans and so really my goal is to say, I wanted our team to be kind of like the black wealth surgeons, to be able to really go in because you have this really deep, serious problem that comes from just maybe hundreds of years of cultural baggage, deep-seated programming and societal norms that have to be addressed and have to be critically analyzed, and just say, okay, what in this process can we tweak that's going to lead to a massive difference? So another small difference is, I'm not anti-college. I've never been anti-college. I'm a college professor. Why would I tell people not to go to college? College is great. But I say, okay, if you go to that HBCU and you're learning these skills that are going to build you these economic opportunities, why not make sure that all the kids also know how to start a business in case they can't get the job that they want, or they don't like the job that they want, or they're not being paid what they deserve? These are standard frustrations for most black people. Most black people, their greatest source of stress is not, okay, I might get shot by a cop today. That does happen, and that should be addressed. Absolutely. Sure. But for most people, you don't even talk to a cop except maybe once every year or two when you get pulled over, and it happens and it's over. But you talk to your boss every day, and the studies show that it's that stress from those daily microaggressions on the job where you're underpaid and overworked and mistreated and not respected. That's what kills you. That, especially for black men, that kills black men. So if you simply make sure that all of our kids just have, we spend 10,000 hours learning how to play basketball and learn how to play football and all that. How about we spend 100 hours teaching the kids how to start a business so they can learn how to create their own opportunities? That's a simple fix. So you invest for that child from the time they're born. You teach them how to start a business. You teach them basic ideas like that ownership is better than renting. That if you go out, because think about how many people Steve, where someone will say, oh yeah, well he's doing really well. Well, why is he doing well? Oh, he's got a great car, he makes a lot of money, and he has a really nice apartment. Right? If you say those three things, then most people will assume that person's doing good. But that's not really building wealth. Because when you're paying that rent, like, so let's say a person pays $1,500 a month to their landlord on time, and they do that for 30 years. Most people don't realize that when you do that over a 30-year period, you've literally bought a $2 million mansion for your landlord. And so the very same people who will buy a $2 million mansion for their landlord are the very same ones who turn around and say, well, I don't have any money to invest. But I'm like, but you don't have any money to build wealth, but you built wealth for him because he took that $1,500 a month payment. He invested that. He built a capital base off that. You pay that car note every month. $600. I know so many people who are living paycheck to paycheck who have car notes that are $600 a month. The average used car note right now is about $550. The average new car note has now approached, I want to say it's approached somewhere near $1,000 a month, or $700 to $1,000. So I explained to a mom one time, who was about to buy this Mercedes, and I said, you should get the Mercedes. I want you to have a nice car. But I said, what if so I asked her a question that kind of pissed her off for a second. And I said, well, do you love your son as much as you love your car? And she said, oh, I love my son more than I love my car. I said, okay,
Sure
well,
you
do
do.
you? Yeah, it's right. And I was messing with her. Right? It was kind of a traumatic question. But I said, okay, so let's assume that as you buy this Mercedes and you pay $600 a month, you also take $600 a month and you put it into a standard S&P 500 index fund. Just let's say you pick one, VOO, Victor, Oscar, Oscar. It's a Vanguard fund, right? And that's all you do. You don't think about it. You don't take any finance classes. That's it. You just make sure that whatever you give to the car dealer, you're investing for your family. I said, do you know that in 10 years, you have well over $100,000 liquid? That's your family wealth. That's your money. You can give it to your son when you want to, but that's really your family money. After 20 years, you're looking at 400,000 approximately, give or take a few thousand. After 30 years, you're looking at close to $1 million in liquid wealth that your family has. So my position is, I know for a fact you don't have to run around telling people, like, I'm not gonna walk around slapping the coffee out of your hand and saying, why would you spend $6 on coffee when you can be, enjoy your damn coffee. There's nothing wrong with the coffee. There's nothing wrong with the nice shoes or the nice trips or the nice car. Just make sure that you love yourself as much as you love paying the car note, as much as you love paying the landlord, as much as you serve everyone else. Just make sure you serve yourself. And to me, that's a very basic idea that if we embraced a piece of that will make a huge difference. So that's what we love to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing how important that is, and couple that with a little bit of delayed gratification. But I mean, when you're talking about the mindset of like what gives people a sense of credibility that they're doing all right because they've got this specific brand name on their bag or whatever or what have you, once you start altering and transforming that perspective, that's everything in terms of how people behave and how they're interacting with money and how they think. And then you add a little bit of time, when you've said many, many times the most important thing is time when it comes to investing and creating wealth. It's really, really important. So like people can get so caught up in keeping up with the Joneses. That's why, in our household, we're like the complete opposite. I mean, we will buy things resale. We will have a car go on for, because when, and one time my son said something to me like, why can't I get some new stuff? I said, you got plenty of new stuff. That baseball bat that you just bought, that was new. You remember that? Remember how much that cost? And this other thing. And I just started listing things. I said, you know how we deal with these other things? Because we don't care. You cannot care what people think of you. You've got to be clear and grounded in yourself. And what's so refreshing about you, Dr. Watkins, is that you instill that in people in a variety of different ways. And, you're such an effective teacher because you have all of the years of intense study around finance, but you also know how to meet people where they're at with incredible analogies that allow them to get a hold of this perspective. And then, I can feel it in myself, when I first started listening to you as well. I mean, just broadening one's perspectives. And it's really, really, really important to have people grounded in who they are and where they're going, as opposed to, because if you're not, all of the other forces around you will dictate who you are and what you are. And you don't even know it, because it's all on the subconscious mind, which is one of your favorite topics. And you and your wife talk about a lot.
Yeah. It's really, I mean, that consciousness and awareness piece is so critical
Mm-hmm.
because you in this society, particularly when it comes to money and capitalism, you have to have your head on a swivel and
Mm-hmm.
your consciousness at a high level because there's so many other people that are operating on a high consciousness level who have the goal of manipulating you.
Oh,
You know,
totally. And something you've talked about that I knew about a bit, but you kind of brought it home for me in terms of, particularly with, hip hop culture is so prolific and so influential, but at some point it kind of shifted.
hmm
And we've definitely noticed from the days of Ice Cube, NWA, Eric B. and Rakim, Public Enemy, then and Dr. Dre, and then things have kind of shifted into a different way. Um, could you speak to that? And also, it's just kind of ironic, but I remember you earlier in the conversation mentioned Revolt with Diddy, and and when that first started, I was like, oh wow, he started a television network called Revolt. This must be. Let me check it out. Let's see if it's for real. It was not. I turned it on. I was like, what the hell is this? And it really, like, it was exactly, I mean, it was right in line with what you're saying in terms of the co-opting of the culture, which you talk about a lot. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, hip hop was just this great social experiment to take something that was very influential and persuasive and to
Mm,
use it as a weapon of mass destruction
mm,
for the minds of millions of people. And it came right after mass incarceration, right, really right during mass incarceration
mm,
when hip hop kind of shifted. And so that linkage between the turning of hip hop and the prison industrial complex, it
mm,
makes perfect sense. It's very
mm,
logical. And again, but no, when did that happen? That happened right after the whole war on drugs, which was a response to the drugs that were put in the community, and which was right after the Vietnam War and things like Project 100,000, when they sent all these young black men over to Vietnam and
mm.
they came back just, completely screwed up. So
Totally.
it's sort of this continuous stream of you can call them attacks, I guess, on the black community
Mm,
to disrupt the family, disrupt the culture, really to get us walking backward, cut our legs off, and create so much trauma that it's unbelievable. The trauma, if you study trauma, trauma affects not just how you maintain relationships, it affects how long you live.
mm,
Traumatized people don't live as long as untraumatized people. And if you just look around and you see this sort of wasteland
mhm,
of these poor kids that are 25, 30 years old that were raised on really unhealthy music, unhealthy ideas that didn't grow up in stable households on any
mhm,
level. You just feel so bad for them. And so, and hip hop unfortunately played a big part in that.
mm,
And now what's happening when you speak about Diddy, what's happening with Diddy
mm,
is something that was easily predictable. I think if you go back 20, 25 years and you look at just how ridiculous things got in the music industry, where you
mm,
had, people like R. Kelly and others and he wasn't a
mm,
rapper, but they were all part of
mhm,
that
mhm.
same culture
Sure.
where they created this space where these young black males were trained to believe that they could get away with anything and that
Mhm,
they could, openly disrespect women and be rewarded for that.
mm,
I remember in about maybe 2009, 2010, having a conversation with a woman where I said, she was listening to a Lil Wayne song, and I said, "Do you know that in that song he literally just said that I will steal your girlfriend and turn her into a prostitute?" and make her kill for me, and then after she's done doing that, I'll murder her and put her dead body in the trunk and then mail it back to you. Like, does that bother you? Does that alarm you that this man just blatantly said that he would, and people were like, oh, it's just entertainment, it's just music, but it wasn't just music. Like, there's no such thing as just music. Everything about music, because my wife reads all these books about the subconscious mind.
Right.
Music is a perfect pathway to the subconscious because it's repetitive and there's symbolism. I asked her once, she's, my wife's a bona fide crazy woman, and I love her for that, because she makes me crazy, and because she's extreme as far as like the things she's committed to. So she'll read these books. She reads like 22 books a year. And so one book that she read was this big gigantic book. I don't remember the name of it, but it was all about the subconscious mind. I said, okay, help me summarize. I said, what are 3 things that you say have the greatest impact on the subconscious mind? She said, repetition, symbolism, and trauma. And I said, okay, so hip hop is all these things. Repetition, the same beat, kill that N-word, kill that N-word, and you got this, this sort of being heard with the very fragile mind of a 9-year-old, so I mean, they're going right to the jugular with that one. And then, the symbolism, if you watch any rap video, the symbolism is everywhere. The symbolism is usually pretty consistent. It's, maybe some status symbols. I'm driving a sports car. There's a lady in a bikini next to me. I've got a machine gun. I've got a bunch of jewelry and tattoos. I've got some cocaine in the back seat. And I'm a boss because of these things, right? All the symbolism has to be there. Without the symbolism, the song doesn't work. And then the trauma is just kind of everywhere because you have this traumatized community that sort of, went through this whole broken family, drug-ridden, mass incarceration era, where most people, and this is on a systematic level, most black people either they or someone they know was either hooked on drugs, went to prison for drugs, or got killed over drugs. And then there's everyone else who had to watch all this happen. And so we're crazy too. We're scared. I went through the mass incarceration era and saw my friends getting 50-year prison sentences. My best friend got shot in the head in front of his daughter, and you're seeing all this, and it scares the hell out of you.
Yeah, totally.
So the trauma's really real. So effectively, we have to find a way to break away from that. I think we have to break that down, analyze it, and say, okay, what does it mean to build something different? What does it mean to change our habits? What does it mean to confront and kill any generational curse that does not help us get to where we want to be? And so, to make it very simple, I say let's focus on simple things that will measure your quality of life. The 3 areas are health, wealth, and relationships. That tends to measure your quality of life: your physical and mental health, your wealth, which is your financial security and your cash flow, and then your relationships with the people that matter to you. And the cool thing about that to me, Steve, is that if you approach those 3 key areas, health, wealth, and relationships, like a science, like almost like when you go to school and you took biology and math and reading and all that, you can actually study these things. Like, I can study how to become mentally healthier. I can learn the techniques from therapists and psychologists on how I can work on my mental health, from everything from just creating a woosah moment through deep breathing to just knowing like what it means to even have good mental health, and not be traumatized, not traumatize other people. I can learn what it means to be physically healthy, which might mean avoiding the food that they're constantly selling to us to kill us, which is giving everybody cancer. I can learn how to have healthy relationships with the people that matter to me, but I have to learn how to value that. I have to understand things like how healthy relationships impact so many other areas of my life. It impacts my mental health. It impacts my financial health, right? And then you go to the wealth piece. Well, I mean, the wealth piece, that's where we live, right? So it's like, oh yeah, here's exactly how you build wealth. Here's how you get your cash flow. Let's talk about that, right? And if you look at that as this really important ecosystem, and like, again, the big 3, in terms of the big 3 things that, if I started a school, I would literally say, let's build our educational process on these 3 areas so we can all be mentally and physically healthy, have good relationships with each other, and understand how wealth operates. What would happen is that the children coming out of that school would be among the most successful people in our society, because they would know exactly what to focus on. They would know exactly what matters. Their self-esteem would be intact. Their physical health is intact. Their good relationships with each other, good conflict resolution skills, which allows you to come together and to build. People don't understand how many trillions of dollars in wealth is lost just from the fact that family members can't resolve their conflicts, or you start a business. I had a friend just this week. I was counseling some young people that they're about 20 years younger than me, and they had a great business. They were making money. They got into this fight. Everybody got emotional, and suddenly the business is falling apart because now they don't want to work with each other. And so so the point is to say that just simple conflict resolution skill is a wealth preservation technique. Even if you think about an example like a rap group, there are many rap groups or music groups, period, that they can't go on tour and make money because they can't get along. Right? Whereas simply having, like, say, a mediator or a therapist in the group to help you resolve the disputes and make sure everyone's heard would allow you to maintain your connection, which directly affects your economics. Like, there are all these studies that show that Gen Zers are getting their butts kicked by the economy, and they're getting body slammed. They can't afford rent. They can't afford to buy a house. All these things are true. But whenever they put these studies up, nobody ever really talks about the fact that when they explain why that 27-year-old can't pay the rent, they always assume that they're doing everything alone. They never say, well, what if this 27-year-old had a spouse or even a best friend that they could get along with, and they could confront their economic problems together as a team as opposed to doing it by themselves? Then suddenly that person who's struggling and barely getting by is actually doing well. They've got a surplus. Now you've got enough to pay the landlord and still save to buy your first property. But to do these things, you have to get along. So these values that people think are old fashioned and stupid, like marriage and family and love and all that conquers so many things, So me getting along with my wife isn't just an emotional exercise. It's a wealth preservation exercise. When I invest in a therapist to sit with my wife and make sure that she's heard, I'm happy, she's happy, that becomes, there's a financial windfall that comes from being smart enough to say, how do I make sure I'm getting along with the most important people in my life so that we're working together to build with each other as opposed to working to destroy each other?
Totally.
Look at how many billions of dollars get made in divorce court, or in family court where they're, in fact, Steve, I'll say this and I'm done. You got me going on this, but
Sure.
The lowest median net worth in America is that of a single black mother with children. She has the lowest median net worth in America, and the second lowest next to her is the single black father that has to pay child support on multiple kids. They're all struggling. They can't get ahead. Why? Well, because God intended, in my opinion, for you to be doing things as a unit. That's I think the studies show that the kids are healthiest when you're working together and you're getting along. And for whatever reason, because we have not developed ourselves and each other in those areas, these kids are abandoned and stranded, and they're not getting what they need. But then also financially, both of you are struggling when simple conflict resolution skill would have allowed you to operate in this world as a team. So economics really is a team sport, but team sports are best played when the teammates show up healthy, right? But if I'm in a household where the father is injured psychologically and just traumatizing everybody because he hasn't been able to work through his issues or whatever, or that there's not enough commitment to the bigger purpose of maintaining that family unit, then there's nothing but chaos. And when there's chaos, 9 times out of 10, when you see family chaos, you also see economic struggle. Those two things are connected.
Oh, totally. 100%. Intimately. And it's so interesting when you break this down. Oftentimes, you'll say in terms of the way, are you able to see yourself? Would you mind scooting a little over to your left so I can see your face?
Yeah, sure.
Fully? Yeah, I could just see one of you. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I never want to interrupt you. So
no.
But thank you for that. But it's so you point out, say, I think I heard you today saying this, like, well, you see Lizzo twerking and doing her thing, and she's very talented, but then you don't see who's the
Taylor Swift.
Taylor Swift, yeah, Tay-Tay, as my daughter calls her, doing this. And you just kind of pointing out, do you see this person? You don't see so-and-so doing this. And you can see, well, the one difference is one is black and one is not black, and one is usually white. And there's a very specific thing that when you just start looking at that, you're like, wow. And you don't see, and you say, do you think that it would be okay if, say, a bunch of Korean businesses or a bunch of black businesses just took up shop in Korean neighborhoods? What would happen? Well, the answer is really obvious when you just kind of make it plain. And that gets into my my next point, which is what's so interesting about what you're doing with the history at your disposal and your analysis and the power of critical thinking, which is to connect the dots over time. So many people are oblivious to this in terms of there's a legacy of how this country started. It was brutal and terrifying. It's called slavery. For Black people specifically, they have a very unique position in this country's history, and we see the residue and the collateral damage to today. There's no question about it. When you start really looking at it, it becomes extremely obvious. But so now you see the culture that's being fed to Black people that is completely unhealthy. The food is horrible. The music is destructive. It's generating all types of horrible perspectives that you're directly speaking against. I mean, it's really amazing. And so, it's no wonder to me that you feel like, lonely or you don't have any friends sometimes. I could totally relate. Like, I feel like, you've got all this insight walking around and you try to talk to people and it's hard to connect with folks because everybody wants to feel like, they're connected or heard. But when people can't understand what the hell you're talking about at first, you've got to slow it down and meet people where they're at. It takes a lot of energy to be a teacher, which is, you have a gift of doing that. I mean, I was in your seminar and I saw you up close. I mean, I knew you'd be great, but yeah, you were just like off the charts. But in terms of like, I've taught as well, and it takes energy, and you've got to actually really care to get through to people. And you've got to be able to, go through what you're doing with authentic commitment and not need that instant gratification of people having those aha moments. Yeah, they will come, hopefully, if you're effective, but that doesn't usually happen right away when you're bringing down some heavy concepts for them to digest. I mean, how do you deal with that? how do you you're just like, well, they're getting it, they're not getting it. I mean, I guess all of the other processes that you do and through meditation and work on yourself help, but is there anything else that you do as mechanisms to deal with that paradigm?
I think it's consistency.
Uh-huh.
I believe that by consistently sharing simple messages that can make a big difference, you have some opportunity to pierce through the culture and get people to reconsider things, right? So, a lot of times I just might lay something out there and I would say, okay, can you prove me wrong? We know that doing things this particular way for this long has not worked. If it has worked, then let me know. Maybe I'm wrong. And most of the time, people are like, no, actually, I can't prove you wrong. And so it's like, okay, well, why not consider a different perspective and a different point of view? And then that repetition piece pretty much leans on the same tools that were used against us. My goal is to say, okay, we've been brainwashed into being less than who we're supposed to be. Now let's brainwash ourselves into being the greatest group of people on the planet. Let's brainwash ourselves to reach our potential. So part of my repetition every day, that's why I started teaching classes every morning instead of once a month or whatever. Because what happens is that when you convince people to consider a different point of view, it's one thing for you to hear it and say, yeah, you're right. Okay, that makes sense. It's another thing for me to help you implement some of these things and form new habits. A lot of us are enslaved by our habits. We know exactly what to do. Like when I was overweight and I was living down in Hyde Park, I kept gaining this weight. You know how it is when you hit about 37, 38, you put on 10 or 15 pounds every year for no reason. I don't know if anybody else goes through that, but I know I was.
And plenty of people.
Yeah, it was terrible, man. And it wasn't like I didn't know what I needed to do. I knew exactly what I needed to do. I needed to go to the gym and stop eating, crappy food. But for me to know what I need to do and for me to actually do it are two totally different things. So for me to really change, I had to, the best part of my decision to marry my wife is that my wife has completely different eating and exercise habits than I had when I first met her. She asked me to go run with her, and I was like, "Are you crazy? My knees will crack and I will just fall apart." But because she's so beautiful, I would pretty much I was her little puppy. I'd follow her anywhere. You know,
Hmm.
I would run with her just so I could look at her from behind. You know, because she's so sexy to me. And I went on this run and I was huffing and puffing and coughing and everything else. But before I knew it, what happened was I got introduced to a different culture and a different way of doing things, not just through
Hmm.
her, but through the people that she spent time with. So, I joined this running club with her. And for the first time, I was seeing like these 80-year-olds that were getting up at 5 a.m.
Oh man,
in
I'm feeling
seven.
old now.
Yeah, they were getting up at 5 a.m. And running in seven
Wow.
degree weather and doing 5, 10 miles. And so being around a different culture
Mm.
and sort of having the repetition of different actions that were different from what I normally did, it shifted my behavior. And she never really forced me to do anything. She would just
Mm.
encourage me.
Hmm.
So if I eat something I'm not supposed to eat to this day, she won't say, "Stop eating that." She'll say, "Mount Boyce." And what that does is that's one little tiny cue that
Yep.
will remind me, like, okay, Boyce, you're not behaving like the man that you want to be. You're
Mm.
behaving like a fat man, and that's not what we're going to do here. So sometimes I say, you know what, screw it. I'm eating the ice cream anyway.
Right.
But then sometimes I say, yeah, you're right. I don't need to do this. Or maybe I'll take one bite and throw it in the trash. You know, or drinking like half a soda does something where, where before, if I'm by myself, maybe I drink the whole thing or I drink 2 cans.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
see what I
yeah.
mean?
And there's
Yeah. So
progress over time.
yeah. Yeah, peer pressure. Peer pressure is big, and I think you should use it to your advantage.
Yeah.
Really think about the person that you want to be and put
Mhm.
yourself in a space with people who behave like the person that you want to be. Because for a while, I think with transformation really requires you to kind of fake it till you make it sometimes.
Mm.
You really have to engage in this awkward act of doing these things that are completely unnatural to who you are. You're trying to be
Hmm.
a better version of yourself and you're
Hmm.
trying to live outside of your body to some extent.
Hmm.
And it's a trap. It's tough because you can't be anything better than what you are. Like I can't be anybody other than Boyce Watkins, and Boyce is limited. Boyce is not capable of being the man that I want him to be. So for me to really do that, it's a spiritual process because someone literally has to pull my spirit out of my body
Yeah.
and make me into a different person, and I can't do that. I
Because
need
I
help.
don't, because it's interesting. I've always had an issue with that phrase, and I'd like to suggest an alternate phrase other than fake it till you make it, because what you were
Mm,
talking about is actually being really authentic and honest, that you're going out of your comfort zone. It's almost like
mm,
be uncomfortable till you make it or whatever. It's like the opposite of faking, actually. I mean, I've heard this time and time again, and I've always wondered about that, but it just kind of dawned on me, like, you're not describing faking. You're describing being completely vulnerable and real, and starting and having the courage to go through a transformation, to start that transformation. That's what you're encouraging people to do in the Black Business School. I mean, that's what you're a catalyst for this tremendous transformation, which is incredible. And it's been going for 10 years. I don't think I asked you so far, what is the actual mission statement of the Black Business School?
We believe in what we call the Black Core of Three, which is
Okay.
we believe Black people should educate our own children, create our
Okay.
own jobs, and support Black-owned businesses. And if we do those three things, then that will increase Black wealth by several trillion dollars. The educational system doesn't, on average, work in favor of building strong Black communities.
Mm-hmm.
It does give valuable skill that makes us valuable to other people, but
Mm.
it doesn't make us valuable to ourselves and to each other.
Mm.
And also creating our own jobs allows us to get away from the stress of the workplace, where a lot of
Mm-hmm.
microaggressions take place, a lot of trauma happens there. So creating our own jobs creates a space that where our best and brightest don't have to leave our communities in order to get opportunities.
Mm.
Opportunities are something that they're created just like anything else. So
Mm-hmm.
instead of thinking of an opportunity as, okay, this is something someone's going to give me, I would rather think of it as, well, how do you create your own opportunities? And you do that through things like investment, entrepreneurship, developing infrastructure. And so, because what the community really needs the most is we just need a whole generation of people that are committed to building. You need
Mm-hmm.
builders, and that means taking your economic education to a higher level instead of simply being trained to manage a pre-existing entity that was created by somebody else. maybe study some of those stories of people that were those pioneers that built these great American corporations and everything else that we just take for granted. So I like to tell stories about the McDonald's brothers and how they built McDonald's and how Ray Kroc worked with them to turn it into the behemoth that it is now, or how UPS was started by two teenagers that were delivering packages on their bicycles, and just so many other stories of companies that had very humble beginnings, but they had these visionaries with tremendous skill who probably wouldn't have done very well just simply working for other people. They certainly wouldn't have reached their potential. And they had a certain view of risk taking and a certain commitment to visions that weren't real. And I know that I agree with you that term "fake it till you make it" definitely has some negative connotations, because there are a lot of people out here that just fake it forever.
Exactly.
But to some extent,
and they never really make it, but they're pretending like they did.
Yeah. Those. Yeah, you would call those. That sounds like you're talking about liars, also, right? just flat out liars, who don't want to put in the work. But if you think about it, like when Sam Walton was trying to build Walmart, people told him he needed to shut down because Walmart wasn't making money, and he was literally one bank loan away from going into bankruptcy. And I remember reading that story about how he had to go everywhere to raise $1.5 million in 24 hours, or Walmart would not exist. And it was an overwhelming commitment to a vision that wasn't real, that didn't exist yet, that allowed him to focus on that. Because a lot of people would have gotten nervous and walked away. See, your ability to build a vision is directly connected to how much you believe in that vision. Right? Your probability of that thing becoming real is highly contingent upon your just undying belief that this is meant to exist. If I have a child and the child has a 50-50 chance of living, my chances of maximizing the child's ability to survive comes down to me being committed to feeding that baby. If I have too many doubts and say, this is a waste of time, this is a waste of energy, this isn't going to work, then I stop feeding the dream, I stop feeding the vision. And then by doing that, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. The vision does not exist because I have my own deep internal insecurities. I don't believe in myself. I don't believe my vision is worthy of existence. So I stop feeding it. I just go back to work and start feeding someone else's vision, because all of us want to kind of play on the winning team. We all want to pour our energy into something that we believe has a chance to be successful. So if you come from a family and a community where you have been swimming in the misery of failure and a lack of self-belief, a lack of self-esteem for such a long time, then why in the hell would you feed into some vision that you manifested yourself? Because you don't even feel like you're even worthy of creating something that's real and powerful like that. Like, you have to be somewhat delusional to really be the sort of pioneers that built some of these great companies out here. Like to sit here and with this dying business. Like, remember, Jeff Bezos spent like 10, 12 years with Amazon losing billions of dollars every year. And he never, there wasn't a time where he said, oh, well, this isn't really working. I'm not very good at this. Everyone's telling me I need to shut down, so I probably should go back to my $300,000 a year job. A lot of people do that. Right? So we tend to abort our dreams because we just don't even believe in ourselves, or we don't have whatever you need spiritually to tether yourself to this thing that isn't even real. I mean, you're literally delusional. You're literally latching yourself on to something that isn't real yet, and you have to be committed enough to invest in it enough in terms of time, energy, blood, sweat, and tears to give this thing a chance to live. And the harsh reality, the sad reality, is that 80% of all Black-owned businesses don't succeed. So there's a very high probability that it's not going to work, and everyone's going to say, I told you so, and that was stupid, and why would you give up that good job to go and try to build that business? And that's cultural. You understand? But a better culture is when I say, you know what, Steve, you gave your all to make this thing work. It didn't work out, but you still did the right thing. You lost a bunch of money, but you still did the right thing. God gave you the vision, and you put everything into pursuing that vision. And here's the deal. Maybe your vision doesn't come true, but maybe your son watched you struggle and work so hard, and he learned from watching you, and maybe he's going to build a vision that's greater than the one that you had.
And also, like, it's not like that person or me could, crash and fall, but then learn and take those lessons moving forward and do it again, or do whatever you need to. I mean, both of my parents were entrepreneurs, so they talked about perseverance and drive and perseverance. And then you can easily, on the flip side of that, you can get wrapped up in, well, I just got to grind and work and work and grind and work. And it's like, well, what's so great about what you put forth is that's great. You got to be battle tested. You got to be grounded in who you are. You're going to take some knocks. You're very honest about the terrain that people are navigating in, and you help them navigate it. But also you talk about balance, which is really, really helpful. Like you need to look after your health. You need to sleep properly and be mindful of what you put in your body. All that matters. And, like your school is so prolific in that way, and what you do personally, in that you're speaking to the whole human being, as opposed to, well, you're just going to start a business and you're going to learn about stock options, you're going to do this, da, da, da. Well, it's a part of a whole type of perspective that, I mean, it's like you're moving a glacier, but you're doing it at a pretty rapid pace, and it's all about it. And so much of how you analyze anything is a matter of perspective, and how do you view it. It's really quite stunning. But if you're not tapped into it, well, then you have no clue what's going on most of the time.
Yeah, yeah, all that, almost everything that involves transformation, really, I view it as it's really a spiritual journey.
Yeah,
When you talk
totally.
about these things that seem to have nothing to do with wealth, but they have everything to do with it. When you talk about culture and
Mm-hmm.
psychology and spirituality, love, self-esteem, connectedness, all these things matter. And because one of the myths about wealth that I think most people should understand is that a lot of people think that most wealth has to do with money. And money is just one form of wealth that exists in your life. I mean, you have
Mm-hmm.
you were born wealthy. You were born with a portfolio. You just may not have had any money, but you have so many things in your life that are so much more important than money. And so the way I view money is it's not a destination. Money is a tool to give
Mm-hmm.
you access to the things that matter more than money. Like money to me, especially this whole hustle grind, like I want to get rich so I can be richer than you. That's very low vibrational thinking.
Totally.
I think a better approach might be to say, look, I like money, I respect money, I want to have money, because if I intelligently use my money, money can liberate me so that I can focus on the things that money can't buy.
Mm.
Money can't really buy your mental health and your physical health and great relationships. There's plenty of rich people whose kids hate their guts. They're unhappy. Deion Sanders.
Totally. Totally.
Deion Sanders talks all the time about how at the peak of his career, he wanted to kill himself.
Mm.
He had all the money, all the women, all the
Wow.
cars, and I think that depression. I'm speculating that depression was driven by this fact that he spent his whole life chasing this thing that he
Mm.
thought would kind of be the pinnacle. He thought that was the
Mm-hmm.
mountaintop,
Mm-hmm.
and you get there and you realize, like, wait a minute, no, it's not. And even Will Smith, I've heard him talk intelligently about about the gift of being in a position where he could have anything he wanted, anything he
Mm-hmm.
wanted to buy
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
whatever, and then realizing that that's not going to do it.
Right. Oh,
So
totally.
that
Totally.
yeah, so the money's not the definitely not the end of the journey. It really is the beginning. And
Yes.
what I would the way I explained it to our daughter, it's funny you mentioned you have a 17 and a 14-year-old.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
we got 2017 and about to turn 14.
Okay.
And so the 14-year-old, when she's about 11 or 12, she asked me what I think she should do when she grows up. And I said,
Mm.
I don't think you should define yourself by a career. I'm not looking to tell you that you should, define or value yourself based on whether you're an accountant or a waitress. I said, instead, I'm going to give you an answer that I think you're going to agree with. And I want you to be happy. And I said, but let's talk about what happiness is and what that looks like. And so we
Mm.
talked about the inalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I said, so think about that. So if you think about the pursuit of happiness, I said, most people, I think, honestly, they're not quite happy because a lot of us don't even know what happiness is. Like it takes some time to
Mm-hmm.
really reflect. Like, what does that even look like? What really makes,
Mm-hmm.
and then a lot of times you find out it's like the simple stuff, like eating your favorite food or hanging out with people that you enjoy, getting plenty of sleep, drinking water, little things like that. It's not the big stuff. It's not the cars and the houses and all that. Like, that's superficial. And then I said, here's the thing. So you talk about the pursuit of happiness. So that means that in order for me to be happy, I've got to be aware of what makes me happy. I've got to know where happiness is, where to go find it. And then I have to be able to pursue it.
Mm.
And that ability to go pursue my happiness requires me to be free to do that. I have to have freedom and awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, so most people on a given day can't go pursue happiness in their life because they got to go to work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I don't know what makes people happy, but I know that happiness probably isn't in that factory that you work in. It's not at your job. We know this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, so if I can help you to become financially secure enough that you can take off work if you want to and pursue happiness after you thought about it and figured out what you need that day to make you happy, then I feel like I've done my job as your dad.
Totally.
And that's it.
I've said this very conversation to my daughter. So thank you. Just want to be very clear about that. I've espoused this general idea to her many times. And you said something in line with that about your daughter. You're like, oh, you want to be a dancer? Well, okay. Well, you want to pursue a dance career or whatever, or an actor or whatever. Yeah, well, the whole cliche is you work in a coffee shop and blah blah blah, and you try to, you're starving artist. Throw that crap out the window. No, you get a little capital base, you get some investments, you got a little thing, and then you can do a variety of different things in your life that allow you to to pursue your happiness. That's just so well put. And when I remember the first time you talked about that, I talked about that very notion with my kids. And this is just an ongoing basis. And by the way, they will both go through your financial literacy for kids. It's something I got to get to, but it's on my list. It's definitely on my list. And it's the thinking. I mean, and it's amplified, no question about it, for young Black children, but also for any children in this country. They're not being brought up in the public school system to pursue their happiness at all. That's never part of the paradigm. It's about going to school and serving somebody else in terms of their other company or what have you. And it's really, really interesting. And I wanted to, in line with that, I wanted to come back to something that we were talking about earlier, which is, just how important it is to be grounded in yourself and being able and not being wrapped up in identifying yourself with certain groups or what have you. I remember, I mentioned earlier about Trump and just trying to listen to what other people have to say, even though I've listened to him talk and I would not want him leading anything anywhere. Like, he just has no business being anywhere near the levers of power. However, Chappelle broke it down about him that really blew me away. He was like, yeah, well, you want to know why he's so popular? Because he said, yeah, the game is rigged. How do I know it? Because I take advantage of it. Because, there is a realness to what Trump is doing. And it made me realize he's way more of a tactician than people realize. Yeah, there are all types of things that, in terms of how he lives his life as a human being that are really just, make me want to do, have that look on my face. Just don't, my kids can't be around you at all. However, there is an authentic quality to him because I don't even know if he knows what's coming out of his mouth next. And, I don't believe in anything he's talking about, but I understood why he's resonating. Because oftentimes you can get wrapped up in your bubble and you don't really understand, like, why is this person resonant? How could they possibly? Oh, they must be insane. But what I think you advocate, which I think is so wonderful, and I think that there is really a burgeoning place in this culture in our country right now for nuanced conversation. That's why I think podcasts are so popular. And that's the reason I never, I thought I was going to go into journalism and potentially broadcast journalism, but I'm like, these short sound bites, there's nothing, I'm not interested. I'm interested in getting to the real heart of things, which I've always been attracted to. And it's very, very interesting how, there's more, you want people to think for themselves. And so it's really good to listen to, people from various walks of life about politics, about different issues, about the financial situation. I may not agree with somebody, but, I'm learning about, Bitcoin. I'm learning about the financials landscape. And it's amazing to me how you can detect it right away. I'm sure you see it all the time when you like, if I mention the word Bitcoin, and as you know, I interviewed the gentleman of crypto after I saw them on, I listened to them on your podcast, which was really, really interesting. And it was a fascinating interview. And so when I mention Bitcoin to people, it's a little less now like, oh, you're nuts. And oh, this is crazy. What is that? Oh, it's really unsafe and da da da. And there's so much misconception about it. And the people are like missing the boat. And that really gets to the heart of what you're teaching about financially and economically. If you're wrapped into all the crap that's like coming at you, like Warren Buffett, he's like, yeah, when people are, have fear, I'm buying. And when it's the opposite, I'm selling. He's doing exactly the opposite. So if you can just kind of be grounded in that, which is what you're advocating, I mean, it's so empowering. Would you mind speaking to that a little bit and the importance of that?
Yeah, don't get distracted by nonsense. That's it. The internet is full of stupid stuff and bad opinions and incorrect information and silly disagreements. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess if you're tempted to sit around and argue all day about whether or not Trump is a good guy or a bad guy, you can do that. But
Mm-hmm.
just know that you're kind of spinning your wheels in a way that doesn't really benefit you directly very much. It doesn't help
Exactly.
your family. It's not helping you do the things that you need to do on a daily basis.
Exactly.
So I think listening in order to learn and understand goes a long way because if I can understand people that are different from me, that's going to help me in a lot of ways. It's going to make me a better person. It's going to make me better if
Mm-hmm.
I'm selling a product. I can do that job better. If I'm trying to figure out strategies to be successful in my own life or ventures, I can gain some of that skill by watching other people succeed. Because the thing is, if you talk about a guy like Trump, um, yeah, I've known he's a prick. I've known that since the early 90s. I read his book, The Art of the Deal. When in 1991, I had a summer internship with General Electric Aircraft Engines Division in Lynn, Massachusetts.
Okay.
And that summer, I read his book, The Art of the Deal. And at that time, he was just, I didn't know he was going to go into politics. He was just known as being this really rich guy. And a lot of black people admired him. A lot of
Right,
rappers
right,
rapped
right.
about, being the Donald Trump. But when this Democrat Republican stuff jumps in, it's like suddenly I can't talk to you anymore because the Democrats told me I can't. And I just resent
Exactly.
that. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
think that's
hate
all.
that.
Yeah, that's ridiculous to me. So, but with Trump though, even then I remember thinking, okay, this is an arrogant guy who was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. He also, I've always felt that he was corrupt. Because remember, he built his first major business deal was he bought a $400 million hotel
Mm-hmm.
in the middle of New York, and based on that project, you really at that time could not get major projects like that done in New York City without dealing with the mafia and stuff like that. So he's always been, if you go into areas like boxing and casinos, that's very shady. He's done
Mm-hmm.
business with these Russians and gotten all this money. This man is as crooked as a $3 bill.
Totally.
He's manipulated the stock market. All these things that a dirty billionaire would do. He's done those things. Also, even in 1991, I remember him saying something that offended me in 91, which was, I think he said something like, if I was a young black male, I'd be really successful because there are so many opportunities for young black men. And so as a young
Mm.
black male, I wrote Trump a letter. I never talked about this. I
Really?
wrote,
Oh, okay.
yeah, I wrote a whole letter and, and I was like, hey, then, I don't think you understand what it's like to be a young black male.
No.
But I'd like to learn more about what you do. Like, so you should take a young black male under your wing. And
Oh,
at that time I was 20 and I didn't know any better. And I was like,
oh,
well, I'd be a great candidate, and I sent this letter. I found his address, mailed it to the Trump Tower, never got a response.
oh,
But that was my first kind of interaction with Trump. And I had read his book. And I guess, and I wasn't really offended by what he said. I just kind of felt like it wasn't true. And I
mm,
wanted at that time to be able to go to New York and, which is the center of finance and be a part of that. But this was me as a 20-year-old, right? I
right, right,
literally
right,
turned
right.
20 that summer.
Oh,
Now, obviously I would, as the years went by, I learned that everything that glitters isn't gold. And
oof.
so with Trump, um,
That
I
gold
just,
toilet he's got. I'm just kidding.
yeah, yeah, yeah. With
It's
Trump,
ridiculous.
I look at Trump as just this guy who, if you study him and study his family history, and I studied his family going back 100 years.
Oh, wow.
There's a lot of lessons you can learn about pivotal steps that his father, Fred, took to turn his family into a wealth generating family. They didn't have wealth when Fred was a kid. His father died when he was 13. He used to be a carpenter and he fixed houses for these millionaires in New York City. And he made the leap of becoming a real estate owner instead of just the guy who fixed people's houses. And that made all the difference. So that little pivot is what created the whole Trump dynasty and everything else. And also I think with Trump, you can look at him and you definitely see a lot of that standard white male privilege. You see definitely, I wonder if he's a diagnosable narcissist. I think that's a reason why he and Kanye West were both friends, because both of them are weirdos. And I never talked to Trump, but I talked to Kanye enough to just feel like, Lord Jesus, I don't want to talk to this man ever again. And so, but at the same time, here's the other thing about Trump that I think people won't acknowledge because they get caught up in the emotionality of politics. Is he's not a broke man. He does know how to make money, whether you like it or not. He can make a couple $1 billion on one deal, and that's something you can learn from. Number two, he's a fighter. He's a fighter. His father sent him to military school when he was a kid, and he went to military school and he became one of the bullies in the military school. He was the alpha of all the little soldier guys. So he has this fighting spirit. So he's not easy to break. That's why he's been able to, sit there, be on trial, have people attack him for this, say bad things about him. And he just keeps coming back because that's a core value of his. And he was talking to Oprah back before black people were told that we have to hate him. He was on Oprah 30 years ago, and she was asking him something about being rich or successful or something. And one thing that he said was he talked about when he was $900 million in the hole. He said that I was walking down the street in 1991 at one of my lowest points. I was $900 million in debt, and I was walking with a beautiful woman, and I pointed to a beggar, and he said, "You see that guy over there?" She said, "Yeah." He said, "This man's net worth is $900 million more than mine." and they said, "Well, and Oprah said, well, how do you work your way out of this? How do you get through that?" He said, "You never give up. You never give up. You keep fighting. You keep going." And my problem is that sometimes because we get so distracted by the politics, we can't hear something like that and say, I can actually learn from that. I can be inspired by that. Your enemies can inspire you too. Or you look at a guy. I remember my mother telling me stories about Dr. Ben Carson before he got into politics. And that was like a point of inspiration for our household. His mother was 13, couldn't read, and the son goes on to become one of the greatest doctors in the world. My mother told me that story before she knew whether he was a Democrat or a Republican. And the fact that him simply being a Republican can cause all of us to ignore him and listen to an asshole like Diddy is just embarrassing. It's ridiculous. It's crazy to me.
It's amazing, and it's powerful. And I know I'm speaking to the choir when I'm talking to you and saying this, but I used to listen to RFK Jr. on his podcast Ring of Fire, and I come from a pretty progressive background. I just don't like labels anymore. It's just so silly to me because we're all a culmination of a variety of philosophies and perspectives. And the moment you say I'm this, then you're locking yourself in on a subconscious level. But I remember listening to him and remembering, how much respect I had for his incredible accomplishments for successfully prosecuting corporations for crimes against the environment. And he prosecuted some very, very substantial cases and won them.
Wow.
And it's amazing that now that he's being labeled in the way he is, a conspiracy theorist, an anti-vaxxer, and whatever else they want to term on him. And, I just come back, and it's like, if people have their gripe, that's fine. That's all good. If you have an issue with him or anybody else in that way, my view is, have you heard him speak, or are you taking instruction on how to view somebody because they're telling you how to view them by starting off an article with anti-vaxxer, conspiracy theorist, he's got a worm in his brain, whatever the heck. And all of a sudden, all these people that I know that actually really, really care about the environment, they don't even know this about him, which is incredible. But if you're not keyed into the heavy level of censorship there is in our country, and how the media landscape is manufacturing a certain perspective, paying homage to Noam Chomsky and the manufacturing of consent, that is real as I'm sitting here and knocking on this table. I mean, but like it's like, I remember when I remember when we chatted a little bit after the stock options summit, and we realized that we're just not typical folks. And I was like, yeah, I'm not typical, and neither are you. Well, there's this level of awareness that you're seeing stuff, and most people are not seeing what you're saying. You're not picking it up. And so it's so important to just like break it down and be real, because most people they're being programmed to like say a certain thing or react in a certain way. And I'm telling you, since I've been listening to you, and everybody is susceptible to it. Everybody. I've noticed this in myself way more, and I'm very grateful to you for that, because I've transformed. I mean, I've kind of been less so, I think, generally than most folks, and I think I've had a decent level of awareness for the most part. But the key is to humble yourself and realize you don't know a damn thing, and you got a lot of growth to do. And then I really have grown, and it's like it's a constant process. That's why, when you're talking about your financial consciousness meetings in the morning, it's like you've got to like get in the gym every day and work that muscle. You've got to have it strong, and you've got to have it worked out on a regular basis. It's like you don't just drink water sometimes. You drink water every day, because your body needs it. And then you start getting healthier and healthier and healthier, and you got to get your mind right. And it's like I'm completely gravitated toward people who are like willing to have the conversation. Just willing to have you say anybody's name, like, RFK Jr., people all got an opinion. Joe Rogan. Oh my God. Conservatives, liberals, just like, he's I said that to an intern, and I just mentioned his name, and I let her go through this like emotional response. And I just pulled one of yours. I was just like, okay. And I just listened. I didn't have one thing to say, yay or nay, nothing. I just listened. I was like, okay. And I was happy to engage, but then she just kind of let it go. And I think because I was so calm and real with her, and I just kind of let her be, I gave her the space to be. And that's what you do really, really well. You give people the space to be and go through whatever they're going through. I think she kind of noticed what was happening with herself. It was really kind of remarkable. It was really kind of remarkable. And I think what you do in all of your classes, I mean, you infuse this incredible ability to have people notice their own perspectives and begin to start to transform it. Because I know, like, when I was teaching, I taught at a few arts colleges, and I taught at journalism school at Northwestern. My main aim was to get people out of their comfort zone. And it wasn't to challenge them for challenging's sake at all. It was to like really kind of connect with them and have them think about things in a more critical and nuanced way. And I just really appreciate that about you for specifically. And I appreciate that in others that are really trying to do that, so like when people are having conversations, it's like, okay, well, can you prove me wrong? Like you were saying earlier, can you, and it's not about like, a debate and win or loss. I'm so not into like having an argument and getting points. Like I'm one-upping myself. I mean, it's so wonderful when you can let that ego go. And then all of a sudden, like, oh my gosh, I can actually really grow with this person, and I can actually grow with my perspective and learn. And so, I gotta say, I kind of like, I kind of take on what you do, which is if somebody gives me a signal that they're willing to like meet me, well, then I'll engage. But if there's nothing there, I'm just like, good luck. And, there's so many people. What's interesting about one of the things that you talk about is that you talk about white supremacy a lot, and you break it down from a historical standpoint in a nuanced way, in a cultural way, and the co-opting of culture and all that, but also that Black people can espouse this, being a Black white supremacist. Could you talk about that a little bit, and how, that's pretty damn confronting, I would imagine, for many Black people, hearing that from another Black person? Like, are you nuts? And you probably get that reaction a lot.
Yeah, I do, I really do, and and by the way, I think my wife is telling me that
Oh,
I
you
have
got to
to
wrap it up.
go in a little bit. Yeah, but
Okay, okay.
I'm enjoying this, man.
Oh,
This is fun.
likewise.
Yeah, I want to do this again. Yeah, well, with the white supremacy thing, Steve, I think it's one of these things where I believe that white supremacy tends to work best when both sides agree, who's superior and who's not.
Mm,
It's like a two-person tango.
mm,
I think that we've been trained for a long time to understand that the more you fit into the construct of white supremacy and just kind of accept your role and kind of play your position in society,
mm,
the easier things are for you. So there are plenty of Black people who get
mm,
rewarded for submitting to white supremacy in various ways and
mm,
and not really challenging things. And so um so what tends to occur, so because think about it, you know the reason that you have wars that happen is because one side believes they're superior to the other and they just
mm,
have to fight it out. If the Dallas Cowboys play the Chicago Bears and you ask the Dallas Cowboys, are the Bears superior to you? They're going to say, oh, hell no, no way. And if you ask the Bears, like, are the Cowboys superior to you? They're going to say no, right? But,
mhm.
and even if you say, well, the Cowboys say that they're superior to you, and how do you feel about that? They're going to say no, and no, we're going to fight it out, right? So they get on the field and they fight it out. And then if you are going to dominate the other party, you pretty much have to take the dominance. Like, you have to force them to accept your dominance. You can't just,
Mm,
they're not just going to show up and hand you the ball and say, you know what, you are better than us. We don't even want to play you because it's going to be bad for us. And I feel like with Black people, if we simply chose to not accept white supremacy, if we just said, okay, if you think you're superior to us, then you're going to have to prove it. You're going to have to fight us.
mm,
We'd be very surprised with the outcome. We'd be very surprised with the fact that that a lot of our talents and abilities would show up that wouldn't show up otherwise when we simply submit to
mm,
whatever we think is the norm, and all these little trinkets and awards we get for sort of accepting or seeking this false acceptance from, say, mainstream America and all this other stuff.
mhm,
Because the thing about white supremacy that's really powerful is that you've got this group of people that have a lot of wealth and power, and they use financial and other kinds of incentives to just let you know, like, hey, look, if you go ahead and you submit to whatever we want you to believe, you do what we tell you to do. We're going to give you awards. We're going to give you a fancy office,
mhm,
in the corporation. We're going to pay you lots of money, and you're going to have a really nice life. But if
mm,
you challenge that system, then you're going to be ostracized, marginalized, financially punished, and we're going to put sanctions on you. Right. And this is something that the United States does around the world. The part of the reason that BRICS was formed, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South
mm,
Africa,
mm,
this coalition to pull their economies together financially, is to confront the dominance of the dollar, because the U.S. government has put sanctions on, I think, 75% of all the countries on the planet, something crazy like that. So this
mhm,
dollar dominance was a type of economic warfare where
mm.
they used the power of, they're like, look, you're in debt, but we can print our money. So we got more debt than everybody, but we're not worried about it because we got the printing press in the back. You
Totally.
can't print anything, and we won't even let you export anything. We've got nuclear weapons, but if you have them, then we're going to put sanctions on you for trying to
Yep.
have what we have.
And
Right?
everybody who's tried to get off the dollar has been assassinated. Anyway,
Exactly. There you go. Exactly. Right. So yeah, I saw this
it's
funny.
just a coincidence, though. It's just
Oh
a
yeah, of course
coincidence.
it is. Oh yeah, of course. There's nothing to it. Nothing to see here, folks. Yeah. In fact, I saw this funny video where they said that people are concerned that gold doesn't back the U.S. dollar. So they said, well, what backs the U.S. dollar? And then they showed all these F-16s flying over an aircraft carrier. That's what backs the dollar. It's the military. So
Totally.
so so ultimately. I think white supremacy it works more effectively when both parties kind of agree who's the
Mm,
alpha and who's the beta. And
mhm,
when you don't agree to that, when you sort of say, no, I'm not a subordinate to you. I'm a human being like you. I'm just as capable. I'm just as smart. Then you're going to have some problems. And what happens though is it's a beautiful thing though, because then just like a football player, okay, you're entering into a real competition. Now you're no longer in this protected, oppressed class anymore. I stand next to this white male and I say, I want to compete with you. And this is what powernomics is all about. It's about understanding that economics can be a competition and I'm going to fight for resources just like you. Well, if he really respects you, he's going to fight you hard, just like he would another white male. And what happens is we're trained to get offended, like, oh, I built a business and they undermined my business or they did whatever. And that's so unfair. And I get that. I understand. But the reality is that, to some extent, there's a price to be paid when you start sitting at the grown-ups table.
Oh
When you
my
start,
God.
yeah, when you
It's a,
start in, yeah, there was this guy, this really wealthy guy who happened to be white. He was more of a libertarian that I became friends with, and he checked out what we were doing, and he said, I have a lot of respect for what you're doing, and he said, and you're really pushing this idea of competition amongst the black community, which I tend to agree with. And he said the one thing that you want to always remember though is that if you come up the hill with your gun out, they're gonna shoot back at you.
totally.
Yeah, and you can't just sort of cry about it and say, "Oh, that's so unfair. That was racist. That was mean." Like, yeah, they're going to be racist. They're going to be mean. They're going to compete with you just like they would anybody else.
Totally.
And that's what battle and competition looks like. That's what that's all about. So if I show up to the football game and I show up as this soft little protected class that spends more time complaining about problems than solving them, then what's going to happen is it's not going to really be a good competition to watch. It's going to be me showing up and saying, well, you scored the first 85 touchdowns. Just give us like 2 touchdowns so that we can have some points too. Right. And because every time we try to throw the ball, you intercept it. Every time I try to run, you tackle me. Like you'd be amazed how many people I have to fight with that will say things like, yeah, every time we try to build a Black Wall Street, they burn it down. I said, well, that means you get up and you rebuild it again. Because
Exactly.
that's the nature of war. I
Right.
study war a lot. I don't know why. I don't know if in a previous life maybe I was in World War II or something. But I will watch a World War II documentary and watch it over and over and over and over again
I,
because war teaches me a lot about life and reality. It teaches
man.
me. I learned from my veteran friends. I respect them
hmm
immensely. I respect those who defended the country.
hmm
I always thank them for their service because I
I
think
noticed that.
there's nothing more remarkable than a human being that's willing to put their life on the line to defend something they
Oh,
believe in. Even
oh
if I
my,
don't agree with what you believe in, I
totally.
respect the fact that you're fighting for that. And the thing about war that's interesting to me is that it really just shows you that it's not a game out here. That it shows
Exactly.
me like what happens to humanity when human beings are really pushed to the limit. That's when we show the extremities of our greatness, and we show the extremities of our savagery. And
hmm
it just it knocks you out of this fairy tale
Mm,
that somehow someone's always going to care about you and love you if you don't even love yourself. If you're not willing to fight and protect and defend yourself and your family and the people you believe in your community or whatever, then unfortunately in the world we live in, somebody's going to come along, take all your stuff and kick your ass and put you in the dirt, and humiliate you in every way imaginable.
totally.
So you better be ready to fight.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of respect for those who understand that. And this is actually, to be honest with you, this is why I end up respecting the Trumps and the Bidens. I respect them all. I think they're all a bunch of corrupt, dirty little lying bastards, but I respect the fight. I'm like, wow, you really, like, they really are trying to destroy you and you're still fighting. Like, I admire that
I
because
mean,
that,
yeah, and unfortunately they're part of a duopoly and a system, and it's like, yes, they're different, but they're part of a structure which has, really helped me transform my perspective to understand that, and that anybody who's trying to like really come up with and really reform it, there are these powerful incentives and entities that say, no, get the hell out of here. And getting back to what you're saying about veterans, my father was in D-Day. And he was in like 5 major battles and 6 major invasions. I mean, and he lost a
wow,
wife and child in World War II. So, and I
wow,
used to wonder, like, and I didn't know that until after he passed, that he had a wife and child before our family.
wow.
And so now I understand why he was so outspoken and he didn't give a damn what people thought. He could stand in his own truth and be powerful in that. And there's something really beautiful about that when you get outside yourself and you're free in that way. And he was never worried about, oh, is he going to offend somebody? He actually was, he tried to meet people where they're at, and he really tried to listen to a lot of different folks. And he was close with people like Harold Washington and Danny Davis and Karen Mosley Braun and Paul Simon, etc. The list goes on and on. And Jesse Jackson and Dr. King. And he was there, protesting when Fred Hampton and Mark Clark were shot. He was like right there, like this is he could see through that crap. But there's something to be said. It energizes you when you speak your truth, and you're not worried about that. And it's hard for people to relate to that. It really, really is. You've tapped into that. It's wonderful. It's powerful. And I just wanted to ask you one question before we wrap up. And this has been awesome. Thank you so much for your time. It's really wonderful to connect and have you on the show. But I was talking to you about my son the other day, and talking about the culture and the co-opting of hip hop, and how this, Black people are fed this absolute crap and glorifying Black on Black violence and just horrible, ways to live your life. And he said, "Dad, are you familiar with the doll test?" And I was like, "Go on. Have you heard about this?"
Yeah.
The doll test. It was originally done in the 40s and then done recently, where little children, Black and white and different races, looking at a Black doll and a white doll and asking questions: which one is pretty? Which one is good? Which one is bad? And I watched this, and you realize this is real, and it's deep. The indoctrination is powerful. And so everything you're doing and standing for is counter that. And I just love the fact that you're standing in love and commitment and self-love and respect. And and the way in which you dissect a problem, you really take it from different perspectives and break it down in a way that's digestible for people. That's a real art. I'm acknowledging you because I feel a need to, because I can really, I've been a teacher, and you're teaching a lot of people. How many people are at the Black Business School right now and taking classes do you think you reach right now?
I would say, well, it depends on which metric we use, but we have about 167,000 that have signed up at the school.
Okay.
And then maybe in the email list, there's maybe about 300,000 or 400,000, and on the different social media platforms, a few million that follow. So there's like different layers in terms of the level of connection. It's a decent number of people. It's a blessing, and it's something that that's become kind of a great life mission and a lot of fun to do. And I'm honored that people give us even an ounce of their attention.
It's incredible. And I think that's a wonderful note to leave on. But I also know that you've been shadow banned. You've been censored yourself plenty. I mean, as I think, please forgive me if I'm misquoting you, but when you get too Black, that's a problem. I mean, when you're really, and I mean, it's just, but I say things that you say, and I appreciate that. And I'm gonna wrap it up right now. I know you got to go, but I'll be trying to tell something to my kids, and I'll say, pay attention now. Pay attention now. Because I'm about to give you some gold. I'm about to give you some stuff that you really need to hear. And it's wonderful to be able to say something and snap them to attention. Like, I really care about you. Please try to digest what I'm saying. For the love of God, please try to listen to what I'm saying. But are there any last thoughts that you'd like to leave our audience with before we wrap up, Dr. Watkins? And thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, first thing I want to do is I want to end with a question. What was your father's name?
Sid Ordower.
Sid Ordower. Okay.
Yeah.
I wanted to know his name. He sounds like a great man, and he sounds like
thank you.
Yeah, he sounds like a free man, and I'm wondering, I think about how sometimes you have to face death in order to truly live, and I think that's a type of freedom that he might have had as a soldier, when you realize that your life could end at any moment, and you faced just the depths of hell because war was hell. And you came out of that. So there's something that happens, I think, spiritually when that occurs. And
Totally.
I love the fact that he lived his life with such tremendous purpose. I have so much admiration for that. Now, in terms of like a final thought, another final thought is, thank you for having me, by the way. I'm honored to speak with you. I've really enjoyed this. I would say that anybody that's listening, I really encourage you to realize life is short. We're all going to be dead soon. And when we die, chances are nobody's going to remember much of anything that matters to us right now. You know, most of us can't name a lot of things that people were doing in, say, 1925 or something. We can name the big stuff, but most of the stuff, it's just gone. It's not even in the history book. And so this is our time. This is our opportunity. This is our moment. And given that life is short, we're all going to be dead soon. And to some extent, not much of this matters the way we want it to. At the very least, we have opportunities to plant tremendous seeds. You know, these seeds that become these pivots that can create these amazing things for people that are not yet born. And most of our teammates, given that people like yourself, and I guess I'd include myself in that group, given that some of these ideas that we share are not, are a little bit ahead of their time. I kind of want to believe that by the year 2100, everybody's going to be talking like this. I think that this, because it's not, you don't have to have a PhD to know that wealth matters and that families are a good thing and mental health is important, right? So these are not, these are only crazy ideas because we're in such a crazy society that has been trained to believe the wrong things, right? So I kind of see it as that, for me, consciousness also means, partly it means understanding that most of our greatest teammates are not even born yet. Most of the people that are really going to apply these things and really take these things to the level that we'd like to see them, they're going to be born in the year 2050, 2070, 2080. So sometimes when I'm talking, I might have a tiny little audience, of people listening and a bunch of people that are ignoring what I'm saying. But what I do is I remember I'm not just talking to those people right there. Maybe I'm talking to somebody's grandchild or some kid that's going to be born in the year 2060 who's going to have to go back in time to find the inspiration to carry him through a difficult moment in the future, just like I did when I would look at old speeches by Muhammad Ali in the 1960s to help me solve a problem in the year 2008. You understand? And so really, that awareness of the importance of what we're doing, the importance of understanding what it means to really do the right thing, even if you don't have all the support that you'd like to have, even when it's not popular, that's what's going to help us climb out of this mess, right? That self-awareness, that love for each other, love for self, knowledge of self, and not being afraid of who God meant for you to be. Like I really believe that there is a purpose for all of us if we choose to pursue it. And then when you see it, don't back down from it. Wake up every day, figure out who the hell you want to be, and don't figure it all out when you're like 92 years old on your deathbed. Figure it out now. And really live that life the way it's supposed to be lived, whatever that means for you. And just know that, that most people aren't going to get that because studies show that 70% of all people will follow the crowd, even when the crowd is wrong. So 70% of your friends are not going to, when you really go on that journey, you're going to be like me, sitting there wondering why you ain't got no friends. But you will have a couple friends that will get you, and those are the people that you hold on to. So I wish everybody the best, and just know most of these problems are solvable if we have the courage to seek out the right solution. So that's my final thought.
Amen. Thank you so much for being here. It was a real privilege. And wow, thank you so much. And please thank your wife for allowing me to borrow you for an extended period for 2 hours and 17 minutes and 22 seconds. Please give her my best, and I hope I get to meet her soon. Dr. Watkins, thank you so much. This has been really scintillating and wonderful to have you.
All right, my brother. Well, great to see you again, man, and God bless you. All right, I'll see you soon.
All right, thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Steve. Take it easy, brother.
Take care. Bye-bye. If you're a content creator and looking for a great service for which to conduct high-quality remote interviews, Riverside is the one for you. I just used it for the first time with this particular podcast episode, and it is outstanding in terms of the variety of resources that they offer. Not only can you record high-quality audio and video, but also they anticipate just about everything you'll need, including creating social media clips, that are perfect for YouTube Shorts and other social media platforms, as well as a transcription of your episode. And they also create show notes for you as well. It's really an amazing service. We highly recommend it. There's an affiliate link down in the show notes, and we'd really appreciate if you do use Riverside. Please use our affiliate link. It would really help us out. Thank you. And we also use TubeBuddy for our YouTube endeavors, and it's extremely helpful with analytics and planning our next video in terms of trending topics. TubeBuddy is very user-friendly and very cost-effective, and we love it. And there's an affiliate link to TubeBuddy and its services in the show notes as well. And our last sponsor is Purium, that gives everyone access to the purest form of organic nutrition on the planet, delivered directly to their customers' doors for a fraction of the cost they are already spending on food. I have been a customer of Purium for many years. We get the Can't Beat This athletic powder drink that's organic beetroot powder, which is amazing. We give to our 2 student athletes on a regular basis, along with their power shake is terrific. Their recovery shake for athletes is amazing. And they have a whole host and wide array of excellent, purely organic products that can help transform your health. If you'd like to order or check out some of the offerings from Purium, you can go to iShopPurium.com and use the code RNL, that's R as in Raymond, ANDL as in Larry, or just hit our affiliate link in the show notes. Thank you for tuning into the show. If you enjoy this podcast, make sure to subscribe to hear more compelling shows on Rhythm of Life, and keep an eye out for our upcoming series of how we as a society oftentimes incentivize all the wrong behavior here in the United States. We see this in the healthcare industry, in the media, and in our educational systems, to name a few of the fields we will be covering. If you have a moment, please leave a rating and review so more people can hear about us, and share about Rhythm of Life on social media, and like us on Facebook. Thanks for listening. I'm Steve Ordauer.
This has been a Rhythm and Light production.